and welcome to the last live stream of the RevComs early summer fund drive, raising $100,000 to put this revolution on the map. My name is Annie Day.
And I'm Rafael Cadares.
And we are very excited to host this live stream here today. We've got a packed agenda. We're going to talk about the moment we're in, the difference that your funds have made. We're going to bring our fund drive home to raise the $100,000, but to go beyond that. And I'll talk about that in a second. We're going to talk today with Lenny Wolf, a national leader in the movement for an actual revolution. He's going to talk about the moment we're in and how we see seizing on this situation to break open the fight, to bring into being a whole radically different system. So I want to thank everyone tuning in. I want to thank people who've been donating. The RevComs are a force across this country that are fighting for a real revolution and a whole new emancipating way to live. And you're going to hear a lot about this today and why you need to be part of it and how you can be part of it.
Yeah, that's the RevComs, Revolutionary Communists. And, you know, we are determined to build up the forces to make an actual revolution in this country, to defeat and abolish this whole system, all its oppressive institutions, including its governing constitution, which was written by slave owners and has continued, and slave owners and capitalists, and has continued to, you know, be the framework in which this system has committed one crime after another, you know, from its founding in slavery and genocide and all the way up to today, where it has white supremacy and male supremacy and, you know, the oppression of LGBTQ people built into it. And, you know, right now is rapidly moving forward to in destroying the environment of our planet. Just last week, we had like the 4 hottest days in 125,000 years, you know, on record, right? So we are in really unprecedented times, you know, and we are determined to not only abolish this system, but replace it with a whole new, radically different constitution for the new socialist republic in North America, a completely different vision of society from the current U.S. Constitution, with a whole different economic system, political system, legal system. We'll get into this more as we go ahead.
So I do want to, like I said, thank everyone. Exactly. And this is what we're seizing on and urgently working to do something about. So I want to, again, thank everyone. We started this fund drive some months ago, and people all across the country have joined together to raise the funds, exactly out of a desire for a better world, out of a determination to do something to stop the horrors that Raphael is talking about. And I'm very excited to announce that we have raised $91,980 of our $100,000 goal, including that a bunch of that came in since last night. So we've, in the last 24 hours, raised $3,420. So again, I want to thank everybody who's donated. I want to thank everybody who's tuning in, who has asked their friends and family to give to the RevComs, who have gone out and shook the can for donations, people who have baked cookies to raise funds for the revolution, people who are crocheting blankets to raise funds for the revolution, people who are going out and selling waters, all kinds of ideas. And you're going to hear today from each other about what people are doing and how to build this and go forward.
And this really is just, you know, this is extremely important, the funds that have already been raised, where we are, you know, also determined to make our $100,000 fund drive today. But this has got to just be the beginning, because, you know, we're already in extremely tumultuous, precarious times, and we're going into even greater storms ahead. You know, this country is, I mean, we've needed revolution for a long time. You know, this country has been an unrelenting horror show for all Black people, for women, for immigrants, but now, you know, the contradictions of the system are intensifying in such, you know, in such a great degree that there's now like potential for revolution that there hasn't been before. You know, we'll talk a little bit more about this as we go on, but the divisions in this country are deeper than they've been since the Civil War. You know, we're in unprecedented times, and this is, right now things are heading in a very terrible direction. But you know, but if we seize on this moment as the old norms are being shaken, and this country is coming unraveled in various ways, and people are having their thinking jolted, we could actually turn this situation around. But that's again where your funds are so critical so that we can get this revolution out there, and we have some tools for doing that.
Yeah, well, that's what I'll talk about. And I just, Raphael's bringing alive the analysis from the revolutionary leader, Bob Avakian, who the RevComs follow. And he wrote a piece a while back. People should go to our website, revcom.us, and read Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating, that walks through the basic roadmap and foundation for how to understand the situation, both the extreme danger, but also, as you were saying, what's really possible. That now is the time, yes, even in this powerful country, where a real revolution could be made to overthrow this whole system, to tear it down, to as you were saying, and actually maybe I'll just talk about these documents for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So okay, you said we've got tools to seize on this situation so that the RevComs become a force that's actually contending for power, that's really moving urgently to seize power. So what are those tools? Well, there's three kind of key things. One, this proclamation, we are the RevComs, and people watching, if you've had it, if you've been part of spreading it, good. For those newly tuning in, go to revcom.us and read this. This is a basic distillation of how we understand the problem that Raphael is talking about. What's the solution? The fact that we don't have to live this way. There's a whole other way the world could be. But also key and kind of important to let people know throughout all of society, there's a strategy for how we could actually make a revolution. How can we go to work today to break open what seems like a permanent nightmare that's feels like an unbreakable monolith? No, actually forces for revolution, even smaller numbers, growing from the hundreds to the thousands and ultimately millions, have a way to fight and a fighting chance to win. And that's what this proclamation walks through, including that there's a force for this, the RevComs, that are stepping out to change this situation, and that you need to join and need to fund. And that's what we're doing here today, is we're working to raise those funds. I want you in a second to walk through what the other kind of key elements are, but I feel like I should start with this matching donation.
Yeah, go for it.
And then you'll bring in, and then Raphael will bring in these, I'm only telling you part of the story, guys. But I did want to kind of open up with this early on. And like I said, we're going to have Lenny Wolf on in a bit. We're going to have Andy Z, who's the co-host of the who's the host of the RNL, the Revolution Nothing Less show. He's going to be here. We're going to hear from the revolutionary leader, Bob Avakian. And stay tuned, because like was done on the last live stream, we're going to do a call-in. So be thinking about that, be reaching out to people. And I'll just say, there's the way to give. If you're tuning in, the way to give is on your screen right now. You can give on Venmo, Cash App. You can call. People are standing by the phones if you want to call in. The PayPal is at revcom.us. And we're going to have, we're going to be here for not too long, but I would say a couple hours. And we want to talk with you about what the situation is that Raphael's talking about, how we see working on it. So if you've been talking to people about the world and what needs to change and the potential for change, call them, text them, ask them to tune in, and remind them that if they want to hear the argument made from the RevComs, tune into this live stream. And if they want to do something with their funds that's really going to matter, tune into the live stream. So we're going to open with a matching donation that we got that came in just as we were beginning this live stream. And this is from a watch party of people watching together on Chicago's North Side. So hello to all those watching. And they're issuing a challenge match for $2,000. And this includes donations from 5 people who pulled that together to make this $2,000 challenge. And they said, "We are RevCom supporters from the north side of Chicago. We've been doing watch parties for several months to support the campaign to put revolution on the map. And today we're issuing a $2,000 match challenge to help achieve the $100,000 goal." So we want to thank people for your generous donations, and everybody who's tuning in, now's the chance to have your $5 have the effect of $10. To have your $25 have the effect of $50, because up to $2,000, your donation will be matched. So in the next bit, We want to see that grow to $4,000, and then we'll be more than halfway to our goal just today. And like you were saying, Raf, we aim to go above and beyond this. So why don't you walk through then the other elements? I cut us off here.
Yeah, well, we were talking about how, the norms of the system, which have always been a horror for masses of people, are coming undone right now, are being battered. There's a fascist Republican Party that's wants to throw out these norms. They got rid of Roe v. Wade, women's right to abortion. They got rid of affirmative action, just like the basic recognition that Black people and other people of color have been oppressed, and that should be redressed, in this society. They're just instituting open white. They want to institute open white supremacy, open patriarchy, all this stuff. At the same time, there's growing war danger between the U.S. and Russia, between the U.S. and China. Direct war, right? And there's already an indirect war, a proxy war in Ukraine that's very, very bloody already, but this could spiral out of control. And there's this environmental emergency that we're already in the midst of. That's not off in some distant future. That's happening now. And, the question is there an alternative to this system, right? People are, so you and I were talking yesterday about how much climate despair there is. People can't even find a therapist to talk to about their despair right now, because the therapists who deal with this are all booked up, but are we just gonna give in to despair when as the world burns and fascists take over this country? Are people just gonna accept the one outrage after another by these fascists, where they strip away people's rights, and then people just try to work within the new situation, which is what's been happening? Or is there another alternative? In fact, there is an alternative, and there's this, there's the Constitution for the New Socialist Republic that Bob Avakian wrote, which I held up a second ago. But now there's this really important new declaration from the RevComs called "We Need and We Demand a Whole New Way to Live, a Fundamentally Different System," which popularizes what's in that Constitution, for the New Socialist Republic, a whole different economic system, not based on exploitation, but based on using the resources of society to meet people's needs and to protect the environment, and much greater rights for the people, whole different dimensions of freedom that are impossible under this system. We don't have the freedom to, stop these police from murdering Black people under this system. They have the freedom to murder and get away with it. That's how this system works. A different system would put an end to that, and would back people up in fighting to end all forms of oppression. And so this is it's so important to give people this vision all the time, but especially in a moment where the legitimacy of the current order is being called into question. That people actually have this vision, and there's a basis now, for millions of people to put forward this demand. We don't want to live under this system. We want to abolish this system and its U.S. Constitution. We want a whole new system and a whole new Constitution.
Yeah, and exactly. And we're going to be talking more about this document specifically with Lenny Wolf later in the live stream. We announced the release of this declaration in Philadelphia, actually, just on July 4th, for people who regularly watch the weekly YouTube, oh my goodness, the weekly YouTube show, the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. You saw just a couple weeks ago when we released this in front of Independence Hall. And we're going to talk more about that. We're going to play some video from that. And I just want to say, your donations made that possible. Mm-hmm. And your donations will make it possible for this to impact society in the millions in the way it needs to. You painted a vision, Raf, of how the strategic role this can play. In order for it to play that role, it's got to impact people throughout all of society. And then the other element in terms of the ways in which the RevComs are working on this situation, the key tools we have for doing that are these interviews that were done with the revolutionary leader, Bob Avakian, mm-hmm. Interviewed by Andy Z and Sansara Taylor, the hosts of the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. And last fall, they had a very deep sit down with Bob Avakian. Avakian is brought forward a new communism. He's written that constitution for the new socialist republic in North America. If you have not watched these interviews, if you have not listened to Bob Avakian, you do not know what is possible in terms of the strategy for an actual revolution, in terms of the analysis for how that revolution is possible, in terms of, we're going to play a clip later today that talks about how the forces for revolution can grow from where they are now, which is way too small. And how if we go to work on this with the urgency and the scientific understanding that he also breaks down on his interviews, we have a fighting chance. But there's also a concentration of who this leader is, which is, I just have to say, humanity is so profoundly lucky that we have this leadership, because this is somebody who concentrates the fact that the world really could be a whole different way. The title of the interviews capture it: Heart and Soul and Hardcore for Revolution. A leader for a time when the future hangs in the balance. And, there's so much in these interviews. People should go right after the live stream is over to youtube.com/the RevComs. It's a 3-part interview. If you've watched them already, watch them again. If you've never seen them before, go right away. Get into these. And mainly, I think you're going to be talking later with Andy Z about the pivotal role these can play. So we just kind of walk through these 3 tools that we see, that we understand have a huge potential in this situation to change everything. But none of that's going to be possible without funds on a major scale. So we are at $134 of our $2,000 match. So thank you to whoever's giving, and let's keep going here.
And I would just also add, your funds are, have already made, important things possible. We went right to, as Annie said, we went right in front of Independence Hall on July 4th, the birthplace of America. We'll be talking about that. And we brought this message, to the world there. And your donations have made the Revolution Nothing Less show possible. Your donations have enabled the RevComs here in Los Angeles and around the country, a group of people from diverse backgrounds and, ages, nationalities, different life stories, but who've come together and really dedicated their lives, at a moment when so many people are just pursuing themselves, frankly, looking out for themselves or their little circle of like friends and family. This is a group of people who's putting it all on the line for revolution in a whole different way that the world can be. And you're supporting that, but all of this needs to grow. We really have a vision. We'll talk about it a little bit more, of these documents, this declaration that we are the RevComs, that needs to get out on the walls. This whole vision of the new socialist society, that has to go up, and, people have to see this as they're being shaken by events in the world, and starting to question, and maybe falling into despair, but then they need to see it on the corner. There's a force, there's a leader, there's a whole different way that society could be organized. So I think this is some of what your donations are going to, and we want to scale it up.
Yeah, and the folks that are here in LA that are part of the national tour to get organized for revolution are anchoring the national movement exactly to go. The people you're describing who are right now living for themselves or whatever, we have to break them out of that. And that's going to happen through the ways in which the world events are jolting them. But if that's going to move towards revolution, it's because they see this impacting society, because their sights get raised, because they recognize there's a different way, and because a lot of the bullshit that holds them to this system gets challenged, which is going to happen by us and by there being a force for revolution.
Yeah. So do we want to read one of the other
Yes, I think you
statements?
Should go to I want to say one other thing. Is that one, there are people, I mentioned the folks from the north side of Chicago that are watching together, and we want to say what's up and recognize you and say hello. But there's also watch parties happening with the Revolution Club in Chicago on the south side. There's a watch party in Los Angeles. There's a watch party at bookstores, Revolution Books in Berkeley with the Revolution Club there, in New York with the Revolution Club there. So we want to say what's up to everybody. And we are, later in today's show, we're going to do a call-in segment with Andy Z. And we're going to invite people here's who should be ready to call, and be thinking about and reaching out about this, because it's going to be a special opportunity to talk with Andy and Raphael with your hardest questions. If you're a newer person, just checking out the RevComs, you're finding out about this for the first time, you're inspired, you're challenged, you're stepping in, but you got questions, call in. Be ready. It'll be like an hour or so. Plan to call in with your hardest questions, and you can pose them to Andy and Raphael, including, is it worth contributing to this? Is it going to go anywhere? Whatever your questions are, call about that. If you have a watch party that you're in the middle of and you want to say what's up and you want to share some of your experience fundraising, then you can plan to call. And then 3, if you are somebody who's been raising funds for the RevComs, for this fund drive, and you've had hard questions that you don't know how to answer, you can call in with those questions and pose them live and in studio. So we're going to do that in a bit. I want to let people know we've raised $664 of our $2,000 match. So that's pretty good. Let's keep it going. This really matters. That means we've actually raised $1,200 of what could be $4,000 if we meet that match. So please keep calling. And I just want to say, if you can give $5, it matters. If you can give $50, it matters. We are a national movement for revolution made up of people, exactly like you said, from all different walks of life. And there's big impact and big funds that needs to be raised. And then there's the collection that has to happen with lots of people coming together for revolution to raise the funds necessary. And I want to say one other thing about that, and then maybe you can talk about, look, there's a lot of importance to the raising the funds for revolution. One is to have a big impact in society, to contend on a societal scale, it requires funds, materials, posters. We have big plans, as you were saying, to get these up all over the walls in a way that captures a lot of attention. And to do that in combination with the RevComs on the ground, out in a big way, pop-up rallies here, there, everywhere, really becoming unignorable and in a way that's unshakable in terms of how we're reaching people. But all that's going to require funds, gas for the vehicles, batteries for the bullhorns and the amplification, the printing. Posters, printing, a shit ton of stickers. All of that is going to require funds. So that's one way that this is important. And we're going to talk more later in the broadcast about advertising efforts and other things on that level. That requires funds on a scale we do not yet have, and that we have to go out. 1, meeting this goal really matters, and 2, going way beyond that. But the other reason that the raising funds matters is because we have to build up the forces for revolution, the muscles, the sinews, the connections of a network for revolution that's organized in such a way where, frankly, in near term, if and as things are breaking open in society and the whole future is on the line, the whole direction of society is on the line, there can be a force that's organized in such a way through its networks, yes, of fundraising and distribution and organizing, that it can actually act together for revolution. That kind of organization, it's not a direct one-to-one, but it matters in terms of whether there's a force that can actually act commensurate with a situation in which we're able to go for the all-out seizure of power.
Yeah, and people watching this have to decide, because look, we are in a situation where there is a looming possibility of civil war. Trump is being indicted, has a bunch of very serious charges on him. We don't know when that trial is going to be exactly, but we know that, there's sections within the ruling class that are trying to constrain Trump. But then on the other hand, you have Trump and his fascist social base essentially threatening violence. Carrie Lake, one of these MAGA politicians, came out straight up and said, if you want to get to Trump, you got to go through a bunch of 75 million gun-toting Americans. Whether they have 75 million people or not, I don't know. But they are threatening civil war. So as this whole situation intense, and they've also said that the fact that Trump is being indicted, essentially means that the upcoming election, if Trump loses, is illegitimate. We saw what they did in 2020, attempting that coup, and they're getting ready to actually win next time and actually seize power, either through electoral means or through, violent means. And or through, corrupting the whole electoral process. So the question is, as this whole situation in society intensifies, what are people going to see? Are they just going to see these fascist Republicans and these like war criminal Democrat imperialists that are doing, essentially the same thing as Trump when it came to immigration, when it came to police murder and all this? Presiding over the norms of this oppressive system? Or are they going to see a whole different force? And is that force going to be organized? Is it going to be out there? And is it going to have those networks of support like Annie's talking about? Because, when a revolution happens, you're going to have, we do need millions of people to become revolutionaries, but then you also need tens of millions of people supporting them, housing them, giving them food, all that kind of stuff, right? That's how a revolution's going to happen, right? So I did want to read a statement from someone who recently became a sustainer. So this is from a longtime supporter of the revolution in the Bay Area. So this person says, I'm a longtime supporter of the RevComs, and I decided to become a monthly sustainer because we need a revolution very badly here in the U.S. No one else but this party has the RevComs has a constitution for the new socialist republic in North America, which will be put in place the day after the revolution. We're talking about this right here. The Constitution is calling for a whole new society with different social relations among the people, free of oppression and exploitation. The current declaration is calling for a whole new way to live, where people are liberated and emancipated. That is the kind of world I want to live in, and the kind of world future generations deserve. I want to sustain the RevComs because the RNL show is extremely important and must go on. It is so exciting to see the Bob Avakian interviews on the RNL show. We are the only ones exposing the horrendous crimes of this criminal capitalist system. Right now, we are all living under the threat of nuclear war. The environmental disasters due to global warming are devastating. I hope we are here long enough to be able to make a real revolution. The Declaration says that human beings are enslaved, exploited, and oppressed all over the world. These crimes against humanity must stop. This cannot go on much longer. Finally, I want to sustain because I think we deserve a better world, and a better world is possible. So I really appreciate that statement, and because I think they captured, what's at stake. Yeah. What we could have, the world we could have, and the world we're forced to live under now, and where that's going. So, but I did want to also add, when we're talking about sustaining, just to clarify what we mean, we're talking about making a donation once a month, like committing to that, and you can put your credit card info into, Venmo or whatever it is, Cash App, and PayPal, and say that you want to sustain once a month. It could be $5, could be $3 on Patreon, could be $5, could be, $100 a month if you have more means. But this is a really important way to contribute to this revolution. I really just want to emphasize it because, for one thing, without sustainers, we don't know. It's unpredictable whether we're going to have money the next month. You know what I'm saying? Like, we actually need to have a reliable base of funds so we can actually make plans to go out and do what needs to be done. But also, as Annie was saying a second ago, this is a way that that you're actually entering. It's not just one-time donations are very important. Don't get me wrong, and we appreciate all of them. But when you become a sustainer, you're committing to an ongoing relationship with this revolution. You're committing to being part of that network of support in an organized way, in an ongoing way. And
I just want yes. And I just want to interrupt to say we're moving pretty quickly. This is great. We're at $1,321 of our match.
All right.
So keep that going. And I'm going to interject just to add, and then I'll intro we're going to play a video in a second, and I'll do two back to back. Just to say it again, we're going to watch a short video that people on the National Revolution Tour made for Instagram about where your funds go when you contribute and why you should become a sustainer. And if you're somebody who's watching, who's given regularly, thank you. It matters. Become a sustainer. at any level, you know, I won't repeat what you just said, but where your funds go, we're sitting here in the studio of the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show with cameras, with lights, all that require funds, both to purchase them, but also to pay for the electricity in an ongoing way. People need this show, and we're going to talk more about it throughout. The revcom.us website, where people can go to learn about world events, what's happening, why, and where they can get the whole body of work that's been developed by Bob Avakian. The forces, the RevComs on the ground that are really aiming to contend and to grow. That's where your funds go to have a big impact all across this country. So we're going to watch this short video. You'll see the RevComs on the ground spreading, impacting society. And then we're going to go right from there to a longer clip. Yes, communists need money. The comment in the YouTube said, communists need money, LOL. Yes, communists need money, straight up. I ain't laughing about it, because we're serious about getting to a different world. We're not just trying to live an alternate lifestyle that, frankly, you can say you don't need money, but you're living off the people of the world, okay? So yes, we are serious about revolution, and we are serious about raising funds, and we are not going to apologize to anybody about it ever. You know, stop spending your money on bullshit. We're going to talk more about it, on reforms that go nowhere, on the bourgeois electoral bullshit of the Democratic Party that are right now putting our world in the crosshairs of nuclear annihilation through what they're doing with Russia and China. No. People need to give their money to the force that's serious about bringing a world into being where we can get beyond than even the need for commodities and commodity exchange. And we'll talk more about that another time. So yes, communists need money, no LOL. Okay, sorry, I couldn't resist that one. So we're going to go from this short clip, and we're going to go into a longer clip from Bob Avakian, from these interviews. And I said this earlier, but look, the RevComs are too small, and we're straight up about that. How do we see changing that? Bob Avakian answers that question. So let's go to those two videos back to back, and then when we come back, we'll be sitting here with myself and Lenny Wolf, and let's see if in this is going to be about a 15-minute video segment, or 14 minutes. Let's see in this video segment if we can get above and beyond that $2,000 match.
Become a monthly sustainer of this revolution. You can begin with as little as $5 a month, but if you can afford more, you need to donate more. $50 a month, $100 a month. Funds are needed to get this revolution on the map.
We're here to say no more, to put an end to murder by police. We have to put an end to this system.
Are we going to accept women and girls being legally categorized as breeders for men in a male supremacist society?
Becoming a monthly sustainer for this revolution also enables the revolutionary leaders and committed young revolutionaries who are out in the streets in all these videos to put revolution on the map.
People waging attacks on our LGBTQ youth are fighting for a Christian fascist violent program to eradicate them from public life, and they should not be allowed to do so.
We don't have an immigration problem. We have an imperialism problem.
Fuck the U.S. and all its might.
Fuck the U.S. and all its might.
For humanity, we will fight.
For humanity, we will fight.
The planet is on fire. We demand the abolition of this capitalist-imperialist system that plunders and destroys the environment for profit.
All these problems that you care about, and the fact that this system, capitalism, imperialism, is in crisis, and society is divided from top to bottom. The rulers can no longer rule in the normal way that people have been conditioned to accept. Means that this is a rare time when revolution becomes more possible. You are needed right now, not after you graduate school or after your vacation, after the summer, or after you get your life straightened together. After is too late. Humanity and the planet needs you now. Look, we need to spread this declaration everywhere, along with the powerful proclamation, "We are the RevComs." Because at a time when the very fate of the planet is in the balance, And when there is a force willing to stand up and say, we will dare to seize a future fit for humanity, what are you going to give your money to?
Yeah, but the people say to us, they look out there and they say, you people don't have that many people right now. You're kind of small. And not only that, there's not really the kind of mass resistance we need. And so how are you going to do that? Yeah, what you're talking about sounds good, but it ain't going to happen. What do you say to them?
Yeah, well, a lot of times it looks like something's not going to happen until the night before it does happen. You know, that's one thing to understand, and that has meaning. It's not just a clever thing to say. You know, this is a time of, you know, when things are being accelerated at an increasing pace, you know, and changes. I mean, who anticipated a year ago even that they would overturn Roe v. Wade? You know, a lot of people are saying, oh, you know, the Supreme Court's bad, but they'll never do that. You know, yeah, I've read many articles where people were writing and saying they'll never do that because most people in the country support the right to, at least the right to choose. Well, guess what? They did it. You know, and that, you know, things of that kind are going to continue to happen at an accelerated pace. And, you know, so yes, it's true. The forces of revolution, in particular the RevComs who base themselves on the new communism, are very small at this time. That's a fact, you know, and we're not gonna try to, you know, bullshit people and pretend something other than what it is, because we base ourselves on a scientific approach to making revolution, which means actually dealing with the actual reality and telling people the truth about the actual reality. I've told this story before. There was a group, you know, I don't know if they're still around or not, but back in the 60s, there was this group called PL, Progressive Labor. I mean, you can imagine, they're supposedly a communist group. Imagine what kind of communism, what kind of group is supposed to be communist calls itself Progressive Labor? I mean, come on, anyway.
Wrong on 2 counts.
Leaving that aside, you know, like in the economism to the nth degree, you know, just like burying yourself in the narrow struggles, you know, of today. But anyway, one of their members got up at a rally, and I think it was actually they were being interviewed too. And I think it actually got into the New York Times, where they said, we have 10,000 members in Harlem. And a bunch of us said, man, what the fuck are you talking about? You don't have any fucking 10,000 members in Harlem? And the guy said, yeah, I know we don't, but if we say it, maybe we'll get them. Well, that's not the way we're going to approach things with that kind of opportunism. You know, you have to deal with the actual reality. So yes, the forces of revolution are small. Right now, the RevCom forces, basing themselves on the scientific method and approach of the new communism, are small. And, you know, if it were just a matter of like gradually accumulating forces, you know, a few today and a few next week and a few next year, and, you know, with the prospect that maybe in some, you know, never land of 70 years from now, maybe we'd have enough people to make a revolution. Well, yes, then you could say that would never happen. But I mean, look, I made this point in 2020 when there was a massive upsurge around the murder of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd. You know, I said, look around you. Nobody expected this kind of massive outpouring, and yet here it came seemingly out of nowhere. But it didn't come out of nowhere. It came out of the underlying contradictions. The oppression of black people in particular, and others, Latinos, Native Americans, and the brutal way in which this is daily enforced by murdering pigs. This was the underlying accumulation of contradictions and, you know, and suffering and anguish and outrage finally burst forth when this was just one too many. It's similar to what's happening in Iran now. You know, I mean, there have been many women dragged off the street by their morality police for years and decades. But finally, this one, you know, with this particularly brutal murder of this, yes, that's what it was. You know, you know, the idea that this 22-year-old woman who was perfectly healthy had a heart attack is outrageous. You know, and nobody believes it. Not even the people telling a lie believe it, I would imagine. Okay, but all of a sudden, things have reached another level. Now, I don't know where all this is going to go at this time. The forces of the ruling class there are still very powerful. But this has gone to a level beyond anything previously. And it's, you know, on the one hand, you know, you could say it's just one more thing. Here's one more woman dragged off by the morality police and brutalized, and it results in her death. But it was just one too many in the context of a lot of other things going on. You know, people are suffering economically and so on. It was just one too many. The same thing in 2020. There were millions of people in the street what was missing then, and we have to fault ourselves in part for this, although we talked about revolution and put out revolution, we didn't really go and struggle with people about, what this really shows is the need to get rid of the whole system. And you're not going to defund the police. Look at what's happened. You got, the great Democratic hero, Joe Biden. The answer is not to defund the police, it's to fund them, fund them, fund them. What'd I say? Fund them. But that was a prevailing line, and so, this thing got led off into a side stream and a side street and didn't go anywhere ultimately, even though it was a, really heroic outpouring of millions of people, which was supported by millions more around the world. Who predicted that a month before? I mean, yes, we've been talking for decades and mobilizing people in struggle against police murder for decades. There's a whole national day of protest against police brutality and criminalization of a generation and repression. That goes back to the mid-90s. But all of a sudden, a bunch of things came together. All right, if the revolutionaries had been working the way we should have been, bringing revolution to that and struggling with people, not just about we need revolution in the abstract, but why these other avenues and lines and roads and programs were not going to lead things where they need to go. The question is, why should anybody put up with this kind of brutal murder time after time after time after time? Why do the parents and loved ones of these people have to shed these tears and cry this anguish time after time after time? Isn't it long past time to put an end to this completely?
Yeah.
Okay, so then what is going to be required to put an end to this and all the other outrages, which we also need to be bringing sharply to light? The oppression of women, the absolute destruction of the environment, the threat of nuclear war going on, the persecution of the immigrants, and on and on and on. The persecution of gay people and, trans people and so on. In the context of all that, we needed to be saying to people, there's only one solution to this. It's not an easy solution, but it's the only real solution. That's what a scientific approach tells us, because this is rooted in the system and we can show it. And the only way to get rid of all this is to overthrow this system. Now, that probably would not have led to a revolution right then, but it could have led to accumulating many more forces. And then the next time something jumped off, like what happened with the overturning of Roe v. Wade, we'd be in a stronger position with more forces and more ability to impact that situation, so long as we were consistently going out there with revolution. And Lenin made the point, leader of the Russian Revolution and important communist theoretician, made the point that in these kind of circumstances, which we're living in now, and it's important to understand, decades of ordinary times get concentrated in not only in years, but in months and weeks. And that's what you saw in 2020 on a certain level, not yet to revolution, but that's what you saw, and that's what's going to be increasingly happening. The question is, are the revolutionaries, small as they are right now? Yes, we're going to be honest about this. We're not going to try to fool people. That's not scientific. That's not principled. But small as they are, can they go out and drive home to people this lesson and show it in a scientifically grounded, understandable way, not talking like, well, you must understand it's the imperialist system that causes all these horrors in the world, and the first thing we need is a proletarian revolution, which first occurred in 1917 after the failure of the Paris Commune in 1871, and was taken to its highest level by the Chinese Cultural Revolution. That's not what I'm talking about, okay? But to go out and in a living way present to people the actual reality of what this is all rooted in, why things are accelerating the way they are, how the ruling class is increasingly in an antagonistic, unresolvable conflict within itself, and how this provides opening for us to actually get rid of all this oppression by scientifically understanding that it's rooted in the very workings of this system, the very dynamics and the very relations of this system, and that we can mobilize and win over the forces, most of all people who are catching the worst hell under this system, which are millions and tens of millions, but also people from other parts of society who hate injustice and who want a better future for humanity and don't want to have nuclear weapons raining down on humanity, don't want the environment to be destroyed. We can win increasing numbers of them over, and it's going to all be very accelerated one way or the other. So we've got to go out with that understanding and give that understanding to the masses of people, like I said, in very basic terms and in everyday language, not in a stilted language that I was just, mocking, to be blunt. But, this is where building up the forces for revolution in a growing way. Today there are small numbers. Tomorrow there are, hundreds verging on thousands. Then there are thousands. And when there are thousands, those thousands make millions sit up and take notice. You see thousands of people all together, firmly convinced of the need for revolution, not in some sort of religious sense, but with a scientific foundation in basic terms. You see them on the political stage, influencing the political terrain, how things are shaping up. Millions of people start taking notice. And millions of people who are telling us today, oh, that'll never happen, start thinking a little differently, or at least questioning, well, maybe it could happen. And then, the question is, do you have a leading force, a core leading this, that has the scientific method and approach and has an actual strategy and plan for how to build up the forces for revolution, how to work to create the conditions for revolution, carry out what we call the three prepares. Prepare the ground, the political situation, prepare the masses of people, and prepare the vanguard leadership so that you can go all the way with revolution. And people are going to start sitting up and taking notice. Wow, there are people out here and they're very serious about this, and they have a scientific approach which they can explain to me in terms that I can actually understand, and they've got a strategy and a program for how to go about this and how to win when the time comes. Not that they've given us a guarantee, but they have a strategy for how to go about winning, and they've got a whole vision and concrete blueprint for what to do when we do win, namely the Constitution for the new Socialist Republic in North America.
So welcome back. I'm here with Lenny Wolf, who's a national leader with the RevComs, a frequent guest on the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show. Welcome to the live stream, Lenny.
Hi, I'm glad to be here. I love the live streams.
Yeah, sometimes and often host of the live streams.
Yeah, sometimes.
So we are still at $1,321 of our $2,000 match. So somebody just put on the chat, I just wanted to read it. They said, everyone send the link and let people know they've got to be watching this. So I want to echo that. Everyone send the link and let people know they've got to be watching this. So we're going to move into our next segment, Lenny. But Lenny, do you want to respond for a second to that?
I just see that somebody says, how are people contributing today, playing a part of this approach? You're playing a part. There's what he ended with. First of all, the whole thing was very on target in terms of this huge question that you confront everywhere and that everybody really should be struggling with all the time. How are we going to get to the place we need? That doesn't happen by magic. But prepare the ground, prepare the people, prepare the vanguard for the time when millions can be led all out to go for revolution with a real chance for winning, if I have it correctly. This is part of these funds, as you pointed out, are part of preparing the people. They're part of preparing the vanguard. They're part of getting organized. We are going to have to be organized to do what BA was just talking about. And this fundraising, and is you said, I'm just re-emphasizing it, is both to fund the urgently needed work of today, but it's also to begin creating the sea in which the revolutionaries have to swim and are going to have to swim increasingly so as things get more and more intense.
Which, as he was talking about, is not in the far off future, but now.
No.
So I want to, to kind of get us into this segment, we're going to be talking about this new, pretty major historic piece. We demand, a whole new way to live, a fundamentally different system. But to get us into that, I want us to play two short clips. One is a 1-minute audio from somebody who's running with the Revolution Club. We just got it this morning, and they were with us in Philadelphia when we announced the release of this, and they made a $100 contribution. So they're talking about what we did in Philly and why people should give. And then we're going to go from that into about a 3-minute excerpt from the speech I gave in front of Independence Hall on July 4th about this we need, we demand, and what it concentrates. So let's go to that, and then I'm going to pose some questions to you, Lenny.
Okay.
This past Independence Day, several members of the Revolution Club, including myself and other allies and proponents, ventured to Philadelphia. The objective was to deliver the message on this day. We need and we demand a whole new way to live, a fundamentally different system. Also to be a part of the Rev Club declaration of the Constitution for the new Socialist Republic in North America. The message was delivered at the birthplace of American Capitalist-Imperialism, Independence Hall, on July 4th, 1776. Slave owners and capitalist exploiters helped ratify the U.S. Constitution. I urge you to donate to the Rev Club and the RevComs. We are trying to raise $100,000 by July 16th and help to put revolution on the map.
I set a new socialist system based on the Constitution for the new Socialist Republic in North America. And this Constitution, as Michelle said, written by the revolutionary leader Bob Avakian, provides a sweeping vision and a concrete blueprint for a world free of the slave chains of this system. Based on class, race, sex, gender, all relations in which one part of humanity is subordinated and dominated by others, not just here, but all over the world. What does a revolution aimed at defeating the violent enforcers of this system, abolishing this system, what does it make possible? We need and we demand a whole new way to live. A fundamentally different system breaks this down. It makes possible a whole new dimension of freedom and the rights of the people. A whole different economy to meet fundamental needs and serve highest interests. Eliminating discrimination, inequality, and oppression in every form. Education that actually educates, that empowers the masses of people. Healthcare to serve the people. Abolishing nuclear weapons, finally abolishing war, and systematically addressing the environmental crisis. Now compare that to the U.S. Constitution, to the dog-eat-dog system that Constitution provides the legal framework for. Are the masses of people free under this system?
Hell no! Hell no!
Well, they're free to be exploited if their labor enriches the power and wealth of the small class of capitalist exploiters, and free to go homeless and hungry if they can't. Are the masses of people free?
No!
Well, they're free to live like a parasite on the sweat and the blood of our sisters and brothers around the world, slaving right now in sweatshop conditions in the factories, the mines, and the farmlands of our planet. They're free to pull a lever every few fucking years to choose between oppressors, vicious fascists on the one hand, war criminal Democrats on the other, that are right now facing off with Russia and China in a way that could lead to all-out nuclear annihilation and the extinction of our species. But you are not, and you can never be free to come together with others to shape the future society in the direction of ending all oppression, ending all exploitation everywhere. Because that requires a revolution. So that's how we kind of released this piece. And I wanted to ask you, Lenny, we just heard from Bob Avakian about the moment we're in, the impact we need to have, and then heard a little bit about this we need, we demand. So in kind of the context of the moment we're in, do you want to talk about what is the significance of this being released?
Well, just to talk for a minute more about the context of the moment we're in, on the Revolution Nothing Less show this week, which everybody should, if you haven't watched it, or even if you have watched it, should watch it again after sometime today or tomorrow, after the live stream is over, and after people give money to the live stream. You make the point, there's a very good opening segment with you and Andy Z, and you make the point in part of that right now there's a huge fight between the fascists and the Democrats around funding their army. And the question is not just some minor question, it's about on what terms are the soldiers that they have in their armies going to be conditioned to think they're fighting. Are they going to be conditioned to think they're fighting for multicultural diversity and democratic rights for people? Or are they going to be conditioned to think they're fighting to reinforce white supremacy, just naked white supremacy, naked male supremacy, and hatred of everybody who's not an American, or contempt for everybody who's not an American? Just open stuff. On what basis are they going to do that? And at a time when they're very stretched in the world and they're preparing, this is another thing entering into it, they're prepared both in participating in and preparing for major international conflicts. Their whole defense thing is being held up because they can't decide. They're in a huge fight about that. And you see this once you begin to see it all over. And the question is, one, we have to understand, well, there's a couple of things we have to understand. It does raise a debate over what kind of society do we want to live in. Right now, the polarization of that debate is, as Rafa was saying, it's like, I used this in the talk at the New York bookstore I gave a little while ago, right before this July 4th element. It's like you have, if you have magnets, and at one pole here is the fascists, and they've got their people, and they're on a rampage. Another pole here is the Democrats, and they have their way that they see fighting this too, and keeping their thing together. And those are what the poles are. And we have to change that to where the pole is between their system and their Constitution, because both those sides claim they're upholding the real Constitution. Look at the Supreme Court. They say they're the strict interpreters of the Constitution. They're a bunch of fascists, and they can use the Constitution to do what they want. The other side of it has to be people who have a growing pool of people who have an understanding. We need a whole different way. We need a revolution. And we need it very concretely between their Constitution, which, as a piece by Bob Avakian that we have on our website makes clear, is an exploiter's vision of freedom with all those limitations. And on the other side, we need increasing numbers of people who have the basic understanding that is in the piece you're talking about. We need and we demand a whole new way to live, a fundamentally different system. So all this is taking place. This is coming out at a time when it's very much being fought over. What are the values and principles that are going to knit society together? But the choices are all wrong. So, I mean, I don't want to keep going. No.
I'm going to ask you a follow-up question in a second, and I want to just say there's an important discussion going on in the chat. Marco, I did see your question, and I want to get to it. We're going to get to it a little bit later in the live stream, I think, as well as the Elm City person. I think those are very good questions and very relevant. And I also wanted to say we're still at $1,321. I see it says Tacoma just now kicked in $100. Thank you, Tacoma, Washington, and that's stayed at that number for a little while. So keep thinking about the difference this will make in the world. Why this is necessary. Reach out to people you know. If you've asked somebody to give and they said, "Well, I don't know, not now," call them right now.
Yeah,
text them.
Call
them right
call
now.
Them.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just with you. Call them. Make a list now. I don't care. While I'm talking, while she's talking, call them.
Yeah, please do. Okay, so now because that number's got to go up. We have to meet this goal here today, and we're determined to meet this and go above this goal today. So let's meet that $2,000 match. Whatever people give in the next up to that $2,000 will be doubled. So give now. Don't hold back, and then let's keep going to meet this $100,000 goal here this afternoon. So Lenny, I want to ask you. You're talking about what are the values that are going to knit society together. Can you talk more? I mean, there's tremendous. If people haven't read this, We Need and We Demand. Go to revcom.us right now and download it and read it. It's inspiring as all hell. And if you could talk some about the content of this and the role that can play in this moment.
Okay, the content of this, I'm just going to have to step back for a minute and again ask people to go back to and tune in the Revolution Nothing Less YouTube show. If you're not watching that and watching it more than once, you don't really know what's going on. And this particular show, there was the opening segment that Annie did. There was a extremely important segment on the fact that the U.S. is now driven to use these cluster bombs in Ukraine. To have the Ukrainians use these cluster bombs in Ukraine, and it goes into what these cluster bombs are. They're very much being stretched. But the middle of the show, there's a tremendous explanation by Bob Avakian on why he felt the great need to write the Constitution for the new socialist republic in North America. So that's, and he's talking about a problem, both the need to say what we're for, but more fundamentally a problem that's posed itself to the revolutions in the past that have been led by communists, by genuine communists. And this is a way to deal with a contradiction that maybe wasn't fully or maybe wasn't correctly recognized by those previous revolutions. So, one, you have to watch that to get the full profundity and to get into the Constitution yourself. But there's also a tremendous importance to this pamphlet for the popularization of the Constitution that is done here, so that people can get a very basic understanding of it. I just want to read a little bit, okay? Mm-hmm. There's the Constitution for the new socialist republic in North America is completely, fundamentally different than the U.S. Constitution. This Constitution for a new socialist republic provides a sweeping vision, a firm foundation, and concrete blueprint for bringing into being a society and ultimately a world free from all forms of slavery, all exploitation and oppression based on class, race, sex, and gender, and all relations in which one part of humanity is subordinated to and dominated by others. And then it lays out 6 points, and it says a little bit about each of those points. I'm just going to say the headlines of each of these points to give you a sense of what this Constitution, the standard it puts, what it makes possible, but the standard it puts forward at a time when people are going to be questioning, well, not only what are the foundations of this society, but that question has to become, what must be the foundations of a good society, of a decent society, of a humane society on the road to emancipation? And these 6 points of what this Constitution entails or makes possible: a whole new dimension of freedom and rights of the people. And then it elaborates on it. And then in the Constitution that Rafa held up before, which, here it is. In this Constitution, it goes very deeply into all the dimensions of that. A whole different economy to meet fundamental needs and serve highest interests. Eliminating discrimination, inequality, and oppression in every form. Education, to actually educate and empower the masses of people. Healthcare, to serve the people. Abolishing nuclear weapons, finally abolishing war, and systematically addressing the environmental crisis. And then it says, after it discusses that particular piece of it, it says, all this is not just a dream or a wish. It is what is possible and necessary in the interests of the masses of people in this country and the great majority of humanity and for the future of humanity as a whole. I'm not totally remembering the question, but that's what this
the question
Constitution,
is what's in this.
That's what's in this Constitution. Yeah. That's what we have to get out to people, though, in contending with all these other visions that are out there.
So I want to ask a question about that in terms of this moment. And I want to say thank you to the people giving. We're at $1,470. So $530 more to make this match. So 50 people can give $10. Somebody should give $30 to round us out. 5 people can give $100. People watching, call people you know, make the contribution, make pledges of the contributions. Let's meet that $2,000 match. And whatever you give now will be doubled. I want to ask Lenny, in Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating, Bob Avakian says very sharply that in this society, things could come to a head as soon as the election of 2024, if not before, in terms of the potential for the all-out breaking open of society and the struggle for society and for the future of society. Right. And we've been talking about building up towards the actual seizure of power. How do you see this document playing that kind of strategic role?
I think you can... If you study the histories of revolutions of the past, if you've lived through it, I lived through a situation that could have become a revolutionary situation. There were some elements of it. If you look at Iran in 1979, that was a revolutionary movement. It was a revolutionary situation, and there's a lot of lessons there, actually, that got hijacked and betrayed by the reactionary Islamic fundamentalists led by Khomeini. So when you get a situation like that, all of a sudden, people are debating on a massive scale over what do we need to do. And they're debating big questions. And you're going to have in a situation, you might have Bernie Sanders. I bought a book by Bernie Sanders at the airport when I was flying somewhere. It's okay to be angry about capitalism. Well, I would say it's necessary to be blistering sharp, much more sharper than we have been about reformist misleading like Bernie Sanders does. But anyway, he says it's okay to be angry because he's seeing that this might not go, this Biden thing might not go, things might get heavy. He does have a sense of some things. And he's positioning himself. And you might have a situation where if you've just been kind of vaguely going on revolution and this and that, and then Bernie Sanders comes out, or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and whoever it is, Sanders or Cortez, is saying socialism, socialism, and with us, it's easy. Mm-hmm. You don't have to go through that revolution stuff. It's easy, but then are we right now, well, it means we right now have to be hitting their programs and exposing their programs, but even more so, this is a way to build up the positive. What is going to be the demand of the people? And are we going to be fighting with people? And it does take a fight with people and a struggle with people to see that there is no easy road to this. There is no way that you just are going to ease your way into a much more just society. This is one reason why we have to struggle, and we should be raising this to people who say, what you're saying is too hard. Yes, it is hard, but that's necessary. That's just the way it is. We're trying to get from one whole epoch of humanity to another. So we've got this Constitution. We've got this very sharp and crystallized and very clear introduction. It's both a summary and an introduction. It's a summary of exactly what this Constitution makes possible and this revolution makes possible. And it's something we should be debating people about. People love the U.S. Constitution. They don't really know what it's actually all about. We can get into that with people. But it's also something we need to be promoting, because if this has got to be the demand, when the crucial moment comes or moments come. This has got to be the demand of millions of people. This concrete demand to as the We Are the RevComs proclamation says, to dismantle the apparatus and the institutions of force and governance that are based on this Constitution, to dismantle that, to abolish the economic system on which it is based, and to establish a new state power based on this Constitution, explicitly based on this Constitution. That's the demand that we're fighting for. And there's both a need to do that for the reason I said, but it's a tremendous positive. Mm-hmm. You're laying out for people right now in a world that's full of despair. One reason people are not right now standing up and coming forward and fighting back and getting into things is because what you guys were saying, people are suffocated and choked by the despair and the horror of this system and where things seem to be careening towards or hurtling towards. But this basic thing and is like a vision. It's something that people can hope on a solid scientific foundation to, again, draw from something B.A. said. And this has got to be everywhere. I just want to, I'll say one more thing. I was not always a revolutionary. And there was a time when I was in San Francisco in the late 1960s, and you would see the Black Panther Party had a 10-point program. It was what we want, what we believe in, what we want, if I remember correctly. And it had a number of demands. We want an end to the robbery of our community by the avaricious capitalist businessman. We want, they had different things, education, trial system, legal system. They had different things. It wasn't, I think things have gone way past that with this. But nonetheless, the point I'm trying to make is people knew that. Mm-hmm. If you talked, I used to buy the Black Panther paper and talk to people in the Panthers, and they would they would say, well, that's our 10-point program. The 10-point program. So why could I just recite it just now? Because people would recite it. It was up on the walls. It was part of the atmosphere. Putting revolution on the map really does mean that this has to become in more and more parts of society, part of the atmosphere, not just part of the landscape or the scenery, but part of the atmosphere in a very dynamic way, setting terms that people are relating to and living by. Okay? And if they're not living by it, it's still a lodestar there for them, as it was frankly, as it was for me in that period. It was something to say, well, that's something I relate to. And there's, it's not about me. It's really about people who are in fact hungry. We see, well, there's no people out here. And then you see something like this Jill Scott video that we talked about at RevCom.us. She did a version of the Star-Spangled Banner that told some of the truth about what this flag has meant for black people in America. And it's not anything any good what it's meant. And there was a tremendous outpouring from people. I think I was in Philadelphia. I saw people when you began burning the flag. They weren't part of the action, but they wanted to come up and take a picture of that burning flag. There's a reservoir that we have to tap, and that's going to take struggle, and it's going to take all of you to not sit on the sidelines, to donate, yes, to donate, but to be part of this. Be part of this, okay? To make this something that's growing, to take up this Constitution, to study the Constitution. But most of all, to distribute these pieces. We are the RevComs, and we need and we demand a whole new way to live, a fundamentally different system, to get these on the walls, in the neighborhoods, in the schools, everywhere, in the cultural centers, and to get these interviews with Bob Avakian that Annie was talking about to help us figure out the ways to get these out into all of society. Those three things. And then on top of that, there's people doing a lot of other really important things that you can see on the Revolution Nothing Less show to wage struggle, lead struggle around different things, to struggle with the way people are thinking. That's got them all going in the wrong direction. And on RevCom.us. So that's, yeah.
Well, no, I'm really glad you brought in this last element of what, okay, sorry. First of all, we're at $1,775 of the $2,000 match on our way towards the $100,000 goal for this live stream. So thank you for the people who are giving. I see it says 50 more from Tacoma, Washington represent. So thank you for that. And thank you to everyone else who gave. And let's keep those donations going.
Let me add one thing on the giving. It's okay to say, I want to help them meet the goal, even though I've given a bunch, I'll give some more. That's fine. I'm not going to. But the thing I would really say to people is, if you go to RevCom.us, there's all kinds of people who are sharing their experiences in going out and raising funds from people very, very broadly, getting a lot of people to support this. And I think the most important thing you can do if you're viewing, if you do feel like, well, I ought to give extra funds even more than I thought I was, is yeah, fine, do it. But then set a goal for yourself to go out and raise those funds, to match those funds by raising them from others, okay? Let's get everybody figuring out, well, you know, you look at the RevCom.us or look at things we put on Revolution Nothing Less show about this, and if there's something that says to you, hey, I could do that, then do it. And if there's something that says to you, that's a little bit out of my comfort zone, do that too. Okay.
Okay, so actually just exactly on that, I want to go to, one is I just wanted to, go back to the point you made about the role that this document can play right now. We demand a whole new way to live, a fundamentally different system in conjunction with this statement of the fact that there's a force for revolution and a strategic approach for revolution, and then along with the interviews with Bob Avakian.
Right.
And, you know, we said in January that we intend to put this revolution on the map in 2023, and we know that it's July. We are working very hard, and we need everybody's, yes, funds, but also your ingenuity, your creativity. How are we going to act on what are these incredibly sharp and sharpening contradictions in society, and impact all of that with these documents, with this whole revolution? Yes, fighting the power and transforming the people for revolution. And Elm City, we'll get to your question in a bit about the relationships between all of these things. But I just want to say, look, the year's a little more than half done, and we know we're in a race against time, exactly because of where things are careening and the work that has to be done. But I wanted to say, I think in this context, people shouldn't underestimate the impact and the power that these documents can have if we get them up in a major way in society, if we act commensurate with what's here in terms of the vision for a whole radically different way the world can be, and putting forward and straight up to people that there is a strategy and a leadership for a revolution while struggling hellaciously against all the bullshit that people are caught up in. So I think this vision of getting these up everywhere is a big part of what we have to do very quickly. And then that can crackle up and out beyond our...
There's people, again, go to RevCom. There's a letter there from somebody who went out to the librarians convention in some city. They had a big convention of librarians, and they found a lot of people, think about it, librarians are under the gun. Why are they under the gun? Because it's a fascist... things are moving towards fascism, and the people who they rely on to stand up for them are not standing up for them, and that creates a vacuum that we have to A, fill, but B, we have to go and we have to understand people like those librarians would want to see this force grow, and they would probably want to take part. Some of them would want to take part in this, but there's people to go to around this. Yeah. There's people broadly in society. I'm sorry.
No. So we're going to play actually a video soon from some of the folks in the Bay Area that have been applying some of this. But I want to first, we've been talking about the importance of raising big funds, but there's the aspect of this that's grassroots.
Yeah.
That's people everywhere taking this up and spreading it. And I want to kind of with that we're going to play a very short, a 1-minute clip from a comrade that was with the Revolution Club in Chicago who's passed away since. Her name was Nisha. There's audio of her talking about how she took this up and spread it. So let's listen to that, and then we're going to go back and forth on that for a bit, and there's more coming up soon. Oh, so before we go to that clip, we're at $1,975 of our $2,000 match. So somebody should give that $25. We want to thank everyone who's given in the last 10 or 15 minutes, but let's make this. Oh, there we go. We made the match. Okay.
All right.
We exceeded the match. So we're at $2,175. We went over our match, and in a minute we'll see that tally of how close we are to our $100,000 goal here today. So let's watch this Nisha clip and talk some about it, and it'll be good to hear her voice and learn from what she did.
Turning them on to the RevComs. Take it out today.
The following text message, read by the Revolution Club member who originally sent it, gives an important example of how it is possible for everyone, including people with very difficult conditions of life, to spread this revolution and be part of organizing others.
This morning, I'm not going to make it out today. I've been talking to more people on this side of town about the march and turning them on to the RevCom.us website. Seems like people like the idea of getting rid of the system for good. This one guy I talked to from the bus stop to his destination said that when I talked, he could see what I'm saying. People need that visual conversation. One person from work wants to join the Revolution Club, and a few more have the website. And one brother said he's read many books by BA. He also told me that the book I've been reading, Democracy, Can't We Do Better Than That by Bob Avakian, was a damn good read. I'm planting the seeds.
Everybody's got a role in a place and is welcome in this revolution. So that is an invitation for you to join the Revolution Club today, to go to work at making this revolution now.
So Lenny, do you want to?
Well, yeah. Nisha died about a year ago. I think a year ago in May, if I'm not mistaken. And that's been a hard loss for comrades in Chicago to absorb. And I worked very closely in Chicago for several summers and got to know Nisha. And it was, I was lucky to see her shortly before she died. But the things about Nisha is, one, I wanted to say, you asked me about this beforehand, she was not scared to ask a question, to say she didn't know, to take notes. She wanted to understand. Nisha came out of some pretty hard conditions, and she really wanted to understand, and she really fought to understand. Second, Nisha didn't always come out, you heard her say, I'm not going to make it today, but I'm spreading it on my own. She really spread this everywhere she went, on the buses, in these crappy jobs that she was forced to work to pay for her shelter. That's a setup they have in Chicago. All these different ways. She was a spreading machine and constantly talking to people and learning from people. And so in that, she was really exemplary. The third thing is that if you thought something heavy might be going down, and you would call Nisha, because you knew she would show up for that, and she would be solid, and that counts. We'll just leave it at that. And then And I think the fourth thing I was thinking about, she was a really, really nice person who really cared about people and really enjoyed people, you know. And so we should, it's, you know, it's very good you're lifting this up here. And this is a person whose example counts, and her, you know, and somebody who we should carry forward within our hearts as we go forward to really bring in a whole new world, you know, that has room for people like this.
Yeah.
For people like this to flourish.
Right. Well, I think that last part is pretty essential. And I also, you know, it gives a feel for the ways in which people from all strata of society can take this up and spread it. It's not a question of you saw Michelle Chai at the end, who's often a host on these live streams. She's not here today, but she's watching, and Mike called in later. But she makes the point, look, you don't have to be 24/7 necessarily. Whatever you can do to spread this revolution, you're part of this revolution. And it's a question of whether you're taking responsibility and spreading this to others wherever you are and whatever you do. And I think that's also something people can really learn. So with that, I wanted to read, we got a snapshot from some of the people in Cleveland that are taking this up and spreading it. We are at $96,207. So thank you to people giving, but let's keep this pace up. You know, let's have that ticker go up in the 5s and the 10s. You know, people have been collecting revolutionary change jars. Those should come in. People can give more than that. Do that. Call, you know, go knock on your neighbor's door and say, hey, I'm watching this live stream. You should tune into it. Have you considered the need and the basis for a whole different world in this time? Tune in, watch, give. So I'm going to read this from some people in Cleveland who are taking this up and spreading it. And they said, yesterday, a team of 2 RevCom supporters went out to a small businesses, barbershops, smoke shops, laundromats, selling cookies, brownies, and cake slices for the $100,000 summer fund drive to put revolution on the map this year. We've raised about $180 and are going out again today to finish meeting and to exceed our goal of $300. This is a great way to raise funds and get people connected with this revolution. This kind of outreach has become our plan B when the weather cancels plans for festivals or barbecues, because it not just raises urgently needed funds, it's putting the revolution before many, many people. Then they say, at least here in Cleveland, fundraisers selling homemade goods are a broad social phenomenon in oppressed communities, churches, community centers, bands, or just basic needs. But only the RevComs are doing this for real revolution, and we found that this is broadly welcomed. Many people contribute. In addition to the price of pastries, many places want bundles of We Are the RevComs, and we need and we demand a whole new way to live a fundamentally different system. Sometimes it opens up discussion and struggle among people who are gathered in the stores, which sort of also function as neighborhood centers. We've run across people when we're out broadly at street corners, festivals, who've picked up materials at one of the shops and were provoked to think. In one barbershop where we've gotten to know the barber, he's been saying for months that revolution is too risky for him. He needs to protect his business. Things are terrible, but why don't we just work on voting? But he's also kept inviting us back. This time we brought the new declaration, this We Need and We Demand, but also a piece from Bob Avakian, the U.S. Constitution, an exploiter's vision of freedom. He actually, this is an edited version of the report, but got into it, and there was some good debate and struggle, and he did make a donation. And then they also say staff at 5 or 6 of the stores have read and thought about the materials, and they want more whenever we get back, with a couple seriously considering sustaining. And one of the stores has welcomed the idea of a display of these proclamations on the boarded up wall that is next door to their business. This is the kind of thing that actually it's pretty significant, and it has to grow exponentially. And this is a place like Cleveland. We've been talking about this outrageous murder that in New Rochelle, New York. That's in Palmdale, California, where the pigs are brutalizing people left and right. In places all across this country where people are abandoned to the brutal mercies of this system. They need to know about this revolution and take it up in these kinds of ways. So your funds today make that possible. And also the raising of the funds show us how that's possible. So I think there's a question that came in. I'm kind of going back and forth. I know we're over time already, but on this part of the live stream, but that's how it goes. We've raised $96,207. So I want to ask people seriously, keep giving. If you have, we're going to get soon into the questions that people have, and I think that also might make a difference in terms of how to answer the questions that come up and why people should give. Here's one of the questions that somebody put on the chat from this person, Elm City. It's a little bit more of the theoretical question, but I think it's a really good one. They said a big part of this We Are the RevComs speak to key elements of the method and strategy to make revolution real, especially fighting the power and transforming the people for revolution. How are people contributing today to play a part in this approach, both projecting this scientifically grounded vision, analysis, and leadership to many more people, which is a lot of what we've been focusing on today, but also strengthening the RevComs as an inspiring pole of resistance? As this We Are the RevComs states, involving masses of people in rising up, I think I truncated this, but involving masses of people rising up to let's actually look at what it says before involving the masses of people in rising up to resist the continuing crimes of the system and defending people from attacks on their rights and their lives by racist, woman-hating, and anti-LGBTQ thugs in and out of government, winning people to the scientific understanding that we do not have to live this way. So that's just me reading what they quoted from We Are the RevComs. And then he goes on to ask, please help us see the interplay between these aspects, fighting the power and transforming the people, and how that relates to the kind of movement that needs to be building and strengthening today, including by giving funds today to support this revolution. How do we build resistance and break people from thinking about how this system wants people to think as part of an overall approach?
First of all, that's a really good question. It's a lot of work that Bob Avakian has devoted to this for a long, long time. But I do tend to think for the short answer is here we have the method, strategy, and plan to make this real. Exactly what you said. We actively we involve masses of people in rising up to resist the continuing attacks of the system. Yes, we do. And we are very seriously and take very seriously and are beginning to do things very seriously around defending people and mobilizing people to defend against the attacks on the rights and their lives by racist, women-hating, and anti-lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender thugs in and out of government. That's very, very important. But there is a question of struggling with people at the same time. It's fight the power, and transform the people. It's not that people get automatically transformed. There's a comma there. If I could maybe that sounds a little Talmudic.
That means closely reading the text, but yes.
But there's importance to it.
Yeah.
There's a whole realm of transforming how people think. That doesn't wait till you're doing both things at the same time, and they're interacting with each other, but it's not a 1, 2, 3 kind of thing. And then it's for revolution. And that goes out of the focus too for a lot of spontaneously, even for people who are communists and genuine revolutionary communists. And then it's dignified as a political line by a lot of reformers and phony socialists, phony communists, so on and so forth. We have got to do all three of these things, including it's got to be for revolution. I think another thing we've got to be able to go out here and very quickly to people make the case that whatever outrage we're leading them in fighting against, it is this capitalist-imperialist system that's at the heart of it. Whether it's Ukraine, whether it's the persecution of transgender people, whether it's this outrage in New Rochelle, which I know people in New York have been out there and today are releasing a statement on, that actually puts forward what to do in that situation. The the need for revolution and the basis for revolution within this system and the possibility of revolution have to be put forward. I realize that's all very abstract. Mm-hmm. It's a big question that you're raising on what's the whole process. I would say that you did get quite a bit of that answer in the clip you guys played, now that I'm thinking about it, from Bob Avakian's talk. How do you intend to go from small to large, the few forces that you do have around revolution now, to the forces you're actually going to need to not just make an attempt at revolution, make a noble attempt, but to actually win. To actually win, which is not strictly numerical, but it does have a numerical expression. How are we going to do that? Well, that's the subject both that's gone into in that clip that you raised, and that's the subject of an awful lot of work that Bob Avakian's devoted his life to, and that I just don't feel we have the time.
No.
I would love to get into it, but I don't feel at least able in a brief compressed time to say much more than that to this question.
I think that's good. I mean, I want to say we've raised $96,707. So we are $293 away from our goal. We are close, people. We are going to bring this home in this live stream here today. So give. Reach everyone you can to give. Actually, I'm going to do. We have another match that came in. So now this will bring us, if we make this match, this will bring us to, I'm not going to do the math. More, Sincera Taylor, who co-hosted the last live stream, did the math much better than me. Okay, we are going to, so a contribution of $785 was made as a matching pledge. So they raise this money together, and they're challenging you people watching to match them to again, in any level amount. So they are a contribution of $785, and this was collected mainly from fixed income retirees who've been reselling clothing and jewelry to raise funds for the fund drive. So up to $785 right now, your donation will be matched by them. And that will bring us pretty close to the end of this $100,000 drive. Although we did start out today aiming to exceed this goal. So again, thank you to everyone giving, and let's bring this home here together, all across the country. I just want to say to what you raised, Lenny, that to the answer and how you answered this question is, there's a multifaceted strategy for real revolution, and I really would encourage. There's a whole body of work from Bob Avakian that speaks to this very directly. And then, in Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating, there's a roadmap for this time for how to wrench the revolutionary opening out of this situation. And the other day, we were talking about this work. And in a part of it where BA says, he talks about, look, what is the fact that society is being ripped apart? How is that going to impact people? He says it's going to cause them to question, and it could even force them to question. And then you are making the point, this really matters. This is very good. But then there's work that we have to do, and think about all the ways in which then when people are being caused to question or forced to question about whether, why we live in the society and whether it has to stay this way and whether we have to come in with some answers, which means going up against a lot of the ways that they're thinking about how we're forced to live under the system, which is mainly tolerating and accepting it and justifying it in some form or another. So this requires a lot of struggle, as well as then leading people to stand up against the attacks, yes, as they're coming. But that's not we can't do one, and you said this, I'm repeating, when, then the other. We have to work at this all at the same time, which means we have to build up the forces.
And that transforming the people, it does mean transforming people so that they approach things and have the tools to approach things scientifically, and not in the way they're taught in this society about how it makes them feel or what everybody else says or thinks is real and everything like that. It has to be a political transformation that we're not going to solve any of these outrages that do keep people up at night. Rafa's point on people wanting therapy for, we're not going to be able to solve any of those short of a revolution that gets rid of this system. And then the third transformation is morally, is that this is a whole dimension to the new communism, that we're not fighting for revenge. And that'll be something that has to be struggled with, that we're not fighting merely to replace those who have had to go before us and now to have our chance at the top. We're not fighting to get something a little bit better in this country and the hell with the rest of the world. We're fighting for the emancipation of all of humanity, the 8 billion people. All those transformations in people do not just flow linearly out of fighting the power, even as fighting the power is absolutely essential. So both when you're working with people in that arena, but also much more broadly, we have to be in society waging struggle with the way that people think. And all of this, again, not as an end in itself, but knit together for revolution. And at a time now when you can see on the horizon, if you use the scientific method, some of the elements that could go into shaping the kind of crises in society that do make revolution more possible. The last thing I want to kind of, before I leave, there's a new important article up on RevCom.us that came up this week. I don't have the name other than Turning Points as the shorthand in my head, but it's about what people did, how revolutions were made in Russia and China at a time when they seemed more distant than ever. At a time of severe defeat and loss for the revolutionary forces, why were they able, out of that situation, to snatch, I don't want to say they snatched victory out of the jaws of defeat. They were able to forge a way when it seemed there was no way. Mm-hmm. How are they able to do that and why? And it was a scientific method. And that, I think, would be very important as well, for people to not just read, but to really marinate on and talk about it with other people. So,
well, thank you.
Thanks for that second bite at the,
yeah, well,
the question.
It's a good question. So hello to new people just tuning in. Yes, hello from Mexico, and from Chicago, Illinois. So we're gonna move into a video. I got a chance to interview David from the Revolution Club in the Bay Area about the Revolution Club in the Bay Area has raised about $2,400 in the last period. And they'll talk about what they've learned from that. They've raised funds from being out at the Pride Festival. They've raised funds from a book sale that they did at Revolution Books, and a dinner plate sale that they did. And David will talk some about the lessons they've learned, and you can read more about the content of what they did at revcom.us. I think there's a lot of rich lessons. So let's hear from David. And then when we get back, we're going to talk with Andy Z, Raphael, more, including about the role that these Bob Bacon interviews can and need to play in this situation. So we're at $96,707. That ticker needs to go up. We've got a $785 match sitting on the table. So give. And let's hear from David. So hello and welcome, David. The Revolution Club in the Bay Area has been quite active in the last several weeks, stepping out in a major way to raise funds. A pretty exciting experience at the Pride Festival in San Francisco. And we've just watched, people here just watched the 2-minute video that you all put on social media about that. A very successful used book sale that Revolution Books did in Berkeley, and a food plate sale that the Revolution Club did in the Bay Area. What are the kind of key lessons that you want to share from all of that experience taken together?
Really, one of the main things that we've learned is, in taking out this proclamation, "We are the RevComs," that it speaks to people who are sick and tired of people being treated as less than human beings. And one of the things we're discovering is that we shouldn't be surprised when we find people who are sick and tired of people being treated as less than human beings, who are paying attention to the world and who are agonizing over the direction of things. So that's really one of the main lessons that we've learned through all of this, is that those people are out there. And what we have to do is actually reach out with this revolution straight up, connect people to it, and organize them into it. And one of the major ways that, one of the main ways that we've been doing that is through this major fundraising effort and through organizing people and connecting with people through fundraising.
Were there kind of different debates that went on, or?
I mean, the main way that we broke open more debate was, like I said, just putting the challenge straight up to people. And once you issue that challenge, then, that the terms are already set there. And sort of, a lot of the struggle that we ended up having with people was, is it really serious what we're talking about here? This situation where there are fascists who are on the march seeking to impose their version of, Christian fundamentalism on society. Like, is it true that we're at a point where there's a looming possibility of a civil war in this country? And, so there was a lot of discussion around the seriousness of the situation. But we did find that quite often people are aware of the heaviness and the seriousness of what's out there. What they're not aware of is that there is a leadership and a strategy to actually make this happen. And we did, we ran into people who had believed all of these, what's been told about communism, that communism being a failed experiment, that it's good on paper, but not in reality. And then, we ran into some people who would like throw snark and stuff like that would just make a little short comment that this is a cult or whatever, but no one that would really like substantively challenge what we're talking about, with content and with substance. And overall, really what we discovered is that there are decent people out there, but they don't even know, by and large, that this revolution exists. So that was really, one of the main things, especially at Pride, was that we were meeting hundreds of people who don't even know that this revolution exists. Let alone making up their mind about it or, understanding that there is a way out of this. They just didn't even know. And we were introducing them for the first time to this revolution and then challenging people on the spot to contribute and to be a part of it. And, a lot of people who stepped forward, they were saying that, great, I've been agonizing. I've been worried about the direction of things. I've been worried about, this growing march of fascism and the way that the Democrats are not doing anything to actually oppose them. But they didn't even know that a revolution actually existed. There was a movement for revolution. So, that's really one of the main things that we've discovered is that, there are decent people out there, but by and large, they don't even know that this is a possibility.
Is there anything you'd like to add before we say goodbye?
I'd like to add in particular that, this whole process has been a learning process for the Revolution Club. And it's been a process of really struggling things out and of really putting revolution first, putting revolution up front and, challenging people not to be on the sidelines and to really make a decision on which side you're on. Let's not be shy. Let's not hold back. Let's be bold and let's challenge people. So, we see that this revolution is not only necessary, but it's actually possible. And there are people out there that we can connect this revolution with, but it's going to take a lot of struggle and it's going to take a lot of organizing to actually challenge people to step into this revolution. But, really overall, we continue to see that fundraising is one of the main ways that people can get organized into this revolution. And it uncovers a lot of deep underlying political issues that need to actually be struggled through and worked out, including within the forces of the revolution.
Well, really appreciate that. I think you guys raised a total of $1,500 in the last. What's the actual number? Do you know?
The actual number, we're at 1,420 something. I don't have the exact figures in front of me. But but that was the overall amount that we raised between the book sale and the food plate sale on one weekend.
And then also, how much did you raise at Pride?
At Pride, we were able to raise $1,000. Interesting thing is that we only raised about $250 on the first day. That day, we summed up that we were too spread out. We were too far apart. We weren't challenging people directly. We weren't putting revolution straight up. And the second day, we changed our approach. We acted as a crew. We formed, we acted as a crew. We changed things up on the second day. We formed up, a line and a visible force at Pride that people felt like they wanted to actually contribute and be a part of this. And on the second day, we raised $750.
So you guys have raised a total of $2,420 something dollars. And I just want to say to everyone watching to take this up as a challenge and an invitation.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the live stream. I wanted to, I appreciated those comments from David in the Bay Area Revolution Club. And I wanted to welcome Andy Z, the co-host of the Revolution Nothing Less show, to this live stream.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking with Andy a little bit more soon, and we're also going to be opening up the phone lines to all of you to call in. We're especially hoping to hear from some of the people who are newer to the revolution. What are your biggest questions about revolution? What are the questions that you're weighing when you're thinking about, well, should I give to this? Should I not give to this? We want to hear from you. Also, if there are people, who are watching at different watch parties right now in LA, Chicago, other places, and you want to give us a sense of what's happening at your watch party, we want to hear from you. And if you're someone who has been out fundraising from others and there's things that you're running into, questions that people are raising that you're, having difficulty answering, or you want to hear what we have to say about that, call in. We're going to, we have Andy here. He's going to be speaking to your questions. Right now, everyone, we are at, it looks like $695 towards our $785 matching donation. That's very good. We are getting closer and closer to this $100,000 goal. So that's what I think $80 more to make this goal. And then we're going to keep pushing. We're not going to stop till we make this 100,000. But I want to start before we hear from Andy. I wanted to start with a statement from a student in the Midwest, a college student who himself donated and also also raised $50 from people that he knows. So he wrote, I am donating to the revolution because it is so desperately needed. With all the contradictions of capitalism, imperialism, the endless wars, racist police brutality, the degradation and enslavement of women, oppression of LGBTQ people, racist attacks against immigrants, and the destruction of the planet by rapidly increasing climate change, we need a way out and a better world, and the RevComs are fighting for just that. He says, I first got introduced to BA and the RevComs by watching clips of his 2003 speech on YouTube, but I had always fallen for the same slander against them, that they were a cult, or that they didn't perform self-criticism. But after watching Sansara Taylor's appearance on Fat Mike's podcast, where she discussed Rise Up for Abortion Rights and the new communism brought forward by Bob Avakian, I finally decided to look into it further and found that not only were the statements made against the revolutionary communists, especially the cult, complete nonsense, completely false, but that the RevComs are the one of the only groups, if not the only one in this country, that's fighting. Sorry, I just lost that's fighting for an emancipating future. So I really appreciated that statement, first of all, because it's from a college student, and these are the kind of things that people get hit with all the time. This when they go out with this revolution, they get told a bunch of bullshit and lies about it. So I don't know if you wanted to respond to that, Andy, and otherwise we can get into some of the other things.
Well, let's move on. I think that's what that student wrote is, when you rewatch this, is something people should pause on and think about it. I think they put it very eloquently and very sharply. Their deception that they were deceived in. They bought the bullshit that's out there. But then they, through accident or intent, they went and checked it out for themselves and realized this is complete crap. And there's actually something very radically different here. But let's get into, get into what we need to talk about.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk to you, Andy, because you are the host of the RNL show, and you actually interviewed Bob Avakian last year. Heart and Soul and Hardcore for Revolution was the title of the Bob Avakian interviews. And, I was just thinking about right now at this moment when, there's this film about Oppenheimer, who's the father of the nuclear bomb, one of the scientists who worked on that. And this is, and it's coming out next week at a moment when there's a very real danger of nuclear war. Even Joe Biden, if I'm remembering correctly, said the danger of Armageddon is greater than it's been since the Cuban Missile Crisis, when people said, it's about a 50% chance of nuclear war between the U.S. and the Soviet Union. But now there's this buildup towards war between the U.S. and direct war between the U.S. and Russia via this proxy war. There's, increasing clashes with China. And I wanted to, in the mix of this, the RevComs are going out, and there's a particular clip from the Bob Avakian interviews. There's a whole analysis of the situation in Ukraine and this war and what's happening, and a challenge to liberals to wake up and act to stop this, where things are heading. But let's go ahead and watch this clip from the Bob Avakian interviews, where he speaks directly to this danger of nuclear war.
I stay in my own lane. You think if there's a nuclear war, it won't touch your lane? I mean, come on, let's get serious around here. You think if U.S. and China go to war, your lane is going to be somehow, I'm just going along in my lane. I mean, people need to wake up and get serious. This is a contest between oppressors, the world's leading oppressors, with the U.S. #1. Yes, USA #1 oppressor and plunderer in the entire world for decades.
All right, so that was just a taste of the Bob Avakian interviews. Andy, we've said that these interviews are a game changer. Why don't you speak to that?
All right, I will. But my understanding is, with this Oppenheimer film coming out, that where he invented the atom bomb, the proposal from the Revolution Books in New York City is to take this clip and latch it on to any streaming, any trailers for this, any advertising for it, and actually to go out to the theaters and bring forward the need for these interviews, which relates to the point of a game changer. I mean, what is a game changer? You're in a game and you're way behind. You're a basketball, take your sport, you're way behind in the game. And let's say you have a star player, but they're being stymied by being triple teamed, the defense, your players are taking shots when they should be feeding the ball to the main player. So what do? You got to call a timeout, and you got to identify what's standing in the way. And right now, the biggest thing we have that player on this team. And that's concentrated in these interviews with Bob Avakian, that we did, Sansara and I did this past fall. We have that star player who's developed, and as we've brought out already in this live stream, a put communism on a more scientific, consistently and thoroughly scientific footing, and done so in a way that just masses of people with a second-grade education, fourth-grade education, or a graduate education can come to understand the problem in the world scientifically, how it objectively exists, and how it's changing and how they could act to change it. He's developed a strategy for revolution. He's developed the Constitution for the new Socialist Republic, which we've talked about. So this is extraordinary leadership. You have that on your team, and yet they're running into, and this leadership is running into the general climate in society, this country where people are given all kinds of goodies, and a political system that says you have freedom to choose between two sets of exploiters. A country that says, just look out for yourself. It's a system that says that. Everybody's out clawing for each other just the way the imperialists are clawing between each other. That's the danger of nuclear war that exists right now. Two imperialist powers, Russia, US, fighting against each other. So he's going up against that. He's also going up against some people who think they know how to play the ball better, right? And they've got all this identity politics, and they're, in these interviews, I want to bring out a point here. In these interviews, he goes into not only all the things that people need, or what people need to know to really understand and change the world, but he actually takes apart the things that are standing in the way of people acting in the way they need to. And there's all these people that this letter writer wrote about who said this is a cult. Well, what do you do with that? And they, and it's part of this woke bullshit that Sansara Taylor's taken apart based on what he's written in Something Terrible or Something Truly Emancipating. And one of the things he says in one of these interviews, he says, all these people talk about marginalization. We're got to represent the marginalized. And he said, well, what's the opposite of that? Well, not be marginalized, be included in the system, right? So, but we don't say marginalized. We're dealing with oppression, oppressed people. What's the opposite of oppression? Getting rid of oppression and freeing the masses of people. So you ask, what does it mean to be a game changer? It means that right now, we have to go out and fight for these interviews. I mean, look, there's maybe 10,000 people have seen a half hour of these interviews or whatever. And a lot of them have liked it. The comments are overwhelmingly positive. Oh, good. They like Bob Avakian. No. To be a game changer, hundreds of thousands of people need to see this right away, and then millions. This could change things. But everyone who has a basic sense of how fucked up this world is needs to see these interviews, and they need to get into it and not just give thumbs up, but they got to go out and struggle with people. They got to go out and struggle with people. Oh, you say that's really good. I'm surprised. I didn't know he was like that. I didn't know he had all those stories. This guy's really great. Mm-hmm. Well, that's the start. That tells you you've been missing something, but now you got to get into it deeper. And, in these three interviews, I'm taking some time here because I'm kind of, you got to change things up.
Yeah.
Just by the way, that's why I'm not wearing my fedora. I got to change things up. Even revolutionaries have to change some things once in a while. You got to change it up here. And we need to, you got to come back, and for there to be a game changer, some of the plays have to shift right now. Mm-hmm. And we got to get out there and fight for this. Those people who say, yeah, that'll never work. Well, have you actually listened to that first and second disc of the first? They're not discs anymore, they're streamed. The first and second YouTubes of him doing it. He goes into this. We played part of it today. How we could go from we know how big we are and how small we are. But we also know that when people really get into the substance of these interviews, they can start thinking differently. And I'll say to all the people who have been so generous to donate to this fund drive, that's very good. Very good. But it's going to take a lot more than that to get the critical mass of people to be a force on the scene, to change the opinions of millions of people. And nobody does it better than Bob Avakian. So we've got to run some plays now that get everything that's standing in the way of people getting into these interviews into the interviews. Now, yes, it takes advertising. This idea for the Oppenheimer film is great. Lots of people seen it. But I'll tell you what, people get out there in society and they, oh, that's just a cult. Or maybe they don't even hear that. But somebody says to them, if it's a kid or a student, their parents tell them, you don't, that's okay for other people to do, but you shouldn't do that. You've got your whole life ahead of you. Or the store owner that was talked about earlier. I can't do that. That'll jeopardize my store. Bob Avakian goes into in these interviews that things are coming to a head. You spoke about that earlier, Raphael, and they're coming to a head. It's going to be resolved one way or the other. And the way it's heading right now is to a truly catastrophic future. These interviews give you the way out, and they do it with, as you said, and Annie said, with tremendous heart and soul. And that matters because if you get to know the character of the leadership, the character of Bob Avakian, it's going to make a very big difference to your understanding what this could unlock. But you can't stop with that. We also say it's hardcore for revolution. And in that, you go through these interviews, you are going to understand what is the problem we face? How do we understand the problem? What are the problems and how people think about the problem that leads them astray? What is the solution? How do we make that revolution? What are the and what is the new society? And everything, whether it's religion, whether it's belief in what Annie was calling the bourgeois electoral bullshit earlier, all these things are obstacles to people opening their minds and then putting their morality, their actions, their words, and joining with the RevComs and supporting them in whatever they can, any way they can to be a part of this. This is, we can't, it's not tolerable when what we're facing for the people who have experienced Bob Avakian, not to get in that timeout and say, yeah, you know what? I've been putting up with a lot of crap from people I know. Even people, I'm speaking about the good people. I'm not talking about those fascist, people out there. I'm talking about the good people who are either sniping at this or ignoring it. And you can't allow that because the future of humanity is at stake. Now, that's either true or it's not true. If it's true, then it's time to get busy and fight for these interviews. And that's how it'll be a game changer, because if it is out there in the hundreds and thousands of millions, if it becomes something that it should be, I'm looking forward to the day when it's attacked on MSNBC TV, but they're actually required to put Bob Avakian on, or I'll go on, or Sansara will go on, and we'll talk about it.
And the best answer to the accusation that this is some kind of cult or that there's nothing there of substance, watch these interviews. There's so much in these interviews. You've never heard a leader that's hardcore for revolution and has a poetic spirit, is quoting Shakespeare, all this kind of stuff you get in these interviews. And you actually, if you watch these interviews, you want to live in the society that Bob Avakian is fighting to bring into being. And I just think another aspect of it, we are talking about the this situation coming to a head, coming storms, looming civil war, profound crisis. In these kind of situations, leadership is decisive, and there's all kind of people leading things in all kind of different directions. Lenny Wolf earlier was talking about Bernie Sanders is leading people one way. The Democrats are leading people another, the mainstream Democrats leading people another way. These woke people, leading people a different direction. So if you want to say anything else about, you said Bob Avakian's we're talking about the game metaphor, Bob Avakian being a star player, but also a star player who lifts the whole team up,
Yeah, well, that is what he does. And he struggles with, he tells it like it is, and he begins something terrible or something truly emancipating with that. He says, I'm not going to come here and tell you just what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. And he does it with an acuteness, helping you see what's right, what's wrong, what's true, what's false. And that lifts everybody up. And we need a kind of culture where people are ready to hear that. So, we're creating that right now. So
right now we're still missing $80 on this matching donation. We beat the match. All right, we beat the match. So let's give a round of applause for everyone who donated to that match. And I have a very special announcement that we also just got a $2,000 donation from people in Hawaii with the message. This is from 2 revolutionaries in Hawaii who donated this in memory of a revolutionary comrade named Gwen Kim. So we are over $100,000 right now. So this is extremely important that we've raised this $100,000. It's a very good start. We're gonna, work on. It's just the beginning, So we wanted to open.
Hey, can I just say something
go for
about
it.
this 100,000? And since we have the idea of, we've been talking about the metaphor of a game changer.
Mm-hmm.
When we were looking at starting this fund drive, $100,000 seemed a little bit out of reach. And we really started going out to people, our supporters. And at a certain point, we said, you know what? We're gonna do this in 3 fundraisers, and we're gonna continue to. And the second fundraiser is all about involving new people. And there's another thing about a game, sports, and revolution. You have to keep working at it. You have to persevere, and persevere with the right plays. And I think that there has been a struggle here to go and do that. We've achieved this, and now we have to go a lot further. And I think anybody who's been watching these can see this is not some, the kind of accusations against Bob Avakian. This is a money-grabbing thing to get. Are you kidding? $100,000 to support all the media that we put out, and it's all by a shoestring. Yeah, I come to the studio a couple times a week, and people are reading. Nothing wrong with peanut butter. Nothing wrong with, I know the crew's all laughing right now. But I'm telling you, people go with, they go without a lot to be able to do this. And all the money that's raised is going to enable us to get out to the people. None of it is going to enrich anybody. Far from it, quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. And so we got to go beyond 100,000.
Definitely. So I also wanted to announce that we also just got a $1,600 donation from Chicago. This was a yard sale. New volunteers, including young people who are just learning about the RevComs, were part of it. And they're working on, strategizing with some of these new volunteers about how to reach and involve even more people in yard sales like this. So thank you to Chicago.
So what's the total now?
It looks like $101,652. So thank you. We're gonna go for another 20 minutes or half an hour or so, and we're gonna take some calls from people pretty soon. Again, call with your toughest questions for Andy Z. And I just I think we'll put the phone number that you can dial up on the screen. But I wanted, while we're waiting for calls to come in, I wanted to read a statement from a group of people in Austin. So it says, Austin, Texas. It says, this weekend, a crew of 6 people, from longtime volunteers to people just stepping into the revolution, came together to make a first big effort to announce to Austin, Texas, that we demand a whole new way to live, a fundamentally different system, and to spread the proclamation, we are the RevComs. Hopefully we can put some of the images on screen while we're reading this. We wanted to make a big splash, so we identified a few walls and street corners to wheat paste large displays. Some of the proclamations and We Demand posters had been taped together so we could get them up quickly, and one member of the crew made a couple beautiful large handmade signs on thin paper with parts of the We Need and We Demand statement declaration. At one spot, a gas station that had been shut down for years and already heavily tagged with graffiti, a man came up who said he was the manager of the property. We showed him what we were putting up, and he said, "Oh, this is good. You can put it up." The postering was a lot of fun and easy to do with enough people. The New York Times even has an article about how to wheat paste posters. But you can also just use white glue and a little bit of water. The temperatures in Austin have been rising to about 105 all week. So by noon, it was too hot to continue. We went back indoors to have lunch, got some R&R, and watched Lenny Wolf's talk at Revolution Books. After the talk, we had a discussion to grapple with the need and challenge and the possibility of quickly polarizing people for revolution. Some interesting wrangling came up in the discussion. The wheat pasting not only covering the walls, but learning how to do this as a team was a big accomplishment. But our biggest accomplishment was the transformation of the team from getting together to do something to really cohering around the common purpose of getting this revolution on the map. Overall, it was a great beginning. So I thought that was a pretty cool statement and story from from Austin, in terms of not only what they did, and people can get ideas from that if they choose, but also the way that they pulled together to make it happen. So if you want to say anything about that, otherwise we have some questions to get into.
Has anybody called in yet? Okay.
So, but one of the questions that came in from someone named Marco on the live stream, let me grab this question. Oh, we just got a call. Why don't we hear a live call? Hi, where are you calling from and what's your name?
All right.
Go for it.
Pause for a moment.
Oh, can you pause for 1 second?
We're just getting a message here. So, Raf, what is the message?
This is about someone, Juanita Young, who, by the way, her son was murdered by police decades ago in New York City, is watching the live stream in New York and pledged to donate $1,000 and challenged others to match her. Thank you so much to Juanita Young. And now the caller who's on the line can be heard. So go ahead, Michelle.
Hi, this is Michelle with the Revolution Club. We're having a watch party at our organizing center, and these questions came up for Andy. One is, where does the fight against woke ideology fit or come into our work? The other one is from somebody in the Revolution Club who recently gave their family member the Constitution for the new Socialist Republic in North America to read, and their response to that was, I don't like reading fantasy. So their question is, what do we say to that? And this is like coming from, this member of the Revolution Club was saying, this is some, people that are good people, right? They talk about wanting a world that's, kind of in line with what we're saying, but they're really hesitant to get into this work. So those were questions from Los Angeles.
All right. Well, I have to put the headphone down, so if you interject, I won't be able to hear you. But Raf is listening, so here we go. Let's take the first question first, but actually they're related, because this is only fantasy if you don't understand the nature of the situation we're in, the nature of the system, and all the things in people's thinking that stand in the way of them understanding and being able to see what needs to be done in this time. But on the first question, what is the campaign that we're undertaking, the speeches that Raphael and Sansara are doing on taking on this woke madness that's out there, this woke lunacy, and how it stands in the way of revolution? Why are we doing that? Well, because a very important base of people, an important section of people who should be part of this revolution are way caught up in this, or are intimidated by those who are caught up in it. And it's got to the point now where it's permeating the entire society, such that everybody feels very constrained by this. And it takes place, I'm not going to obviously go through Sansara's speech, but you can see, even in the example I gave from the interviews that Sansar and I did with Bob Avakian, and how he, he just says everybody's now talking about the marginalized. I just made this point before. Well, there's a problem if that's how you're thinking about the problem, that people are marginalized and they need to be included. And of course, his point is not that people shouldn't fight against discrimination and being, kept out of housing and jobs and all this other thing. We have to fight against that kind of stuff. But the problem is the framework in which people are approaching this is not getting to the heart of it. It's actually fighting, and actually this is what their fight is for inclusion, as opposed to the necessity to fight oppression. And, it's very, I don't want to start walking through the whole interview here, but he does give other examples of where people are kept from thinking that they have any ability to change the world. And that, in fact, the only arena where they have any, what they would like to call an agency, any ability to act, is in canceling other people who in some way or other have transgressed against one or another thing. And it's when people's focus is on microaggressions, for example, on being that's the whole arena, and what they're consumed with is parsing through what people say on social media, let alone their whole lives, to correct all of that, and not look at the macro picture, as I think you guys brought out in the speech. Mm-hmm. The macro problem is it's the system that's giving rise to all this oppression, and there's a basis to overthrow that system in this current period, which gets to the very substantive point, although it's not so developed, when somebody says, well, that Constitution, I don't like reading about fantasy. Well, this Constitution is not fantasy, actually. And in fact, I would say, one thing I would say to this person is you need to read this again. And you need to get outside, just to think about what it says. Get outside of how the world has been for the last period of time, okay? And start seeing how he deals in this Constitution with the kinds of problems that we face today, and that even in a new society we'd have to go to work on. And we played on the most recent Revolution Nothing Less show that Lenny spoke about earlier, a whole segment where, from this interview, where a whole question and answer, where Bob Avakian spoke to how you would work through the contradictions that people face and bring them to act in their interests, even when they may not perceive things in their interests, without putting a gun to their back, is the metaphor he uses. And to think, see how this has solved some of the problems of the first socialist stage in creating a society and institutional means to go to work on all the forms of exploitation and oppression that exist in the world as a whole, and all the forms of thinking and oppression that exist now, the education system. And Lenny and Annie read through earlier in the document, We Need and We Demand a Whole New Way to Live, some of the aspects of the Constitution that are delineated. Okay, I think Lenny read them. And so I would say that this is a first order question. The second order question is, and very important, is we are living in a time when revolution becomes possible. You say, well, I don't understand how that could be. You're very small. The people are all messed up, and you just can't do this. Well, again, you're not seeing how things can radically change. Every revolution after it's happened, every revolution before it's happened, people say, well, that's impossible. When revolutions do occur, people say, well, it was inevitable. Because why is that? Because the contradictions that make revolution necessary, that we go into every week on the Revolution Nothing Less show and on RevCom.us, we call them the 5 stops, the different forms of oppression that people care deeply about: oppression of black and brown people, the oppression of women, LGBTQ people, the question of immigrants, climate change, war. All these things, we make the case why they can't be solved in the within the confines of the system. and we're in but they could be solved with revolution. How they all have they're all structured into the framework of capitalism, imperialism in this country, and so we can. So that foundation then takes place now, as Lenny brought out. I'm not going to repeat what he said earlier, but I will commend that you get into something terrible or something truly emancipating, and the We Are the RevComs proclamation. They are taking place in a political context in this country where revolution could be possible, and don't think it can't happen, because every revolution has happened when people didn't think it could happen. Now, that doesn't prove the point. That's just an assertion. But if you go very deeply into the article that's up on revcom.us right now, it's titled Turning Points. I don't have the full title in front of me, but it speaks about, what have been what we call stage managers of revolution have existed before. So, so I don't want to actually go further into that now, but that article goes into how in the Russian Revolution and in the Chinese Revolution, what seemed to be impossible, that the revolutionary leaders at that time, Lenin in Russia and Mao Zedong in China, analyzed those contradictions and went to work on them. And when a mix of objective contradictions came together with the fact that they had stood by principle and forged a force around those principles, there then became a basis to go forward and make that revolution. Now, you might want to add something to that, or?
Well, I mainly wanted to add that our funds have now gone up to $103,652. So this is, we have well surpassed our $100,000 goal, and we're going to keep going for, a few more minutes. So we are still waiting for callers to call in. Do we have any more? Not right this sec. So again, the numbers should be on the screen. Call in your hardest questions for Andy Z, host of the Revolution Nothing Less show. Biggest questions about revolution, questions that come up when you're fundraising. I did want to read because we have gotten a number of questions basically about reform versus revolution. I'll do the Marco. Should I do the Marco question first? Okay. Okay, well, let me read this question from Marco because he is watching the live stream and put this in the chat. He said, honest question, lots of respect for the Rev, but you all have done a lot of these live streams and raised a lot of funds, but it doesn't seem like this movement is growing. Why do you think this is?
Well, thank you for asking the question, first of all. And we have raised our goal, and that's, I will say, we're talking about a revolution. It's going to take a lot more than $100,000. And in part, we've raised that money because of the generosity and the sacrifice of what is, yes, still a small group of people, the hundreds and hundreds who have contributed. And that needs to be tens of thousands and more. But we haven't been growing, you say. Well, I guess I would refer you back to my earlier comments in terms of we're up against a situation where, first off, we could be growing more than we are. And so there is a question of not just wearing a different hat, but running some plays much more consistently, struggling with the masses of people. If I would identify, any one thing that we actually have to do much more vociferously, much better, is really get out there and struggle very hard with people to get out of all the different things that are holding them back. That this is just about, it's very painful to me. In New Rochelle, there was this shooting. I don't know if they talked about it earlier in today's program. New Rochelle is and at this point, while there's a wealthy part of that suburb, there's a whole massive section of the city that's very oppressed. A lot of black people have moved out of New York and live in New Rochelle over the last decades. And there was one black man who was diagnosed as having mental problems, schizophrenia, I believe. Anyway, he was in a small shop, and he grabbed a a banana, and a couple of grapes. And this shopkeeper just, so allowed. I can't go without that. So I will call the police. And the police came up and they fucking killed him. And they knew what he had done. Any decent society who has security forces, the cops would have said, wow, are you hungry? All right, I heard you took this banana. Let me go in. I'm going to pay for the banana. I'm going to give him the 79 cents for the banana, and let's see if we can help get you well or get you what you need. But not in this society. And people in the community, as I understand it, have referred back to killing after killing after killing. And thank you, Juanita, for that donation in memory of Malcolm Ferguson, your son, who was killed by the police in a brutal, brutal murder, as they all are. They all are. And the people in this town know about and lived through the George Floyd uprising. And yet the spontaneous reaction of people is to do what? Well, I guess we got to vote for new people in the city council. Maybe we need to change the police chief. You know, and maybe if we pray. I've been going to such funerals for over 50 years, and these people know this history. Some of them, one woman was in a walker, I understand, who was part of a movement to try to change this decades ago. So to answer your question, why aren't you growing? Is we have to get in there and struggle with people, not just say these are the problems. But actually say, what are you holding on to? What are you holding on to? These elections do not give you any say or any opportunity to change things. Look, the big struggle was for body cams. There is body cam footage, but they turned it off when they killed him, or they're not releasing it if they didn't turn it off. This is not going to solve it. White supremacy is woven through and through with the capitalist system. You need a revolution. So why haven't we grown? Well, fundamentally, we haven't grown because the situation isn't fully sharpened yet, but it's sharp enough that there's a basis for people to come into the movement for an actual revolution. But what's standing in the way of that? No, it's not the RevComs standing in the way of it. The RevComs are very dedicated in going out, but we too need to be much more offensive, which means going on the offense and not being on the defensive, not answering every charge that people make against us when they're so stupid. But we do have to answer them by also go on the offensive against not letting people set these terms, but letting what's in those interviews set the term, letting what we need, we demand set the terms. We are the RevComs set the terms, and go ahead and fight for this, and we can't do it ourselves. That's why we keep saying on the RNL show, you need to be part of this, and part of how you can do this is getting people to watch the RNL show every week, where people see at least part of the Bob Avakian interviews. They get Bob Avakian's work is woven through it, and I know you might want to add something to that, but I think we haven't grown fundamentally because of where the things are at in this society, but we could be doing a lot better, and we intend to do it.
Yeah. Do we have any more calls? I will add something to that. Very soon. Well, why don't you let us know when they call in? But I would say that it's we are in, as I was saying before, unprecedented times where the divisions in the society are deeper than they've been since the Civil War, and the possibilities for revolution are greater than they've ever been that they've been in a long, long time, because the hold of the system is being loosened over people as these fascists batter the old order, as the climate keeps flooding and causing floods and droughts and tearing up people's lives all over the world. And yet, at the same time, people's spontaneous reaction to that situation, to that intensifying situation, is not good right now. You know what I'm saying? People are hopeless, like unprecedented levels of depression, anxiety, suicide. People are arming themselves, but it's on both sides of the political aisle. But it's a lot of nihilism, to be honest, and so what we're going into this situation trying to radically change what people are, what people think is necessary and possible. And we're trying to put something new on the map that doesn't exist right now, up against all these people telling, oh, vote for the Democrats. Just more, black elected officials can solve this police brutality problem. We're trying to put something new on the map that doesn't exist. And the more that we, the RevComs, though, grasp that this is a critical turning point, and in society, and a moment that hasn't existed before, that opens up new possibilities, the more we can go out and struggle with the determination and the urgency that the system requires, And so I feel like there is a big challenge to us to rise to that. And I would also put the challenge back to Marco, that you got to be part of working on this problem that you're describing, So.
Yeah, I appreciate both of those points. Within the question of rare time, that this moment that you're speaking about, we've been saying that for about a year, which is what he's speaking of. What he's raising the question. I've been watching these live streams that have been gone over the last 3 months. One of the things that has to be, there's two things that have to be interjected into the situation, which you just spoke to. One, we have to struggle ferociously with masses of people about all these things that hold them back, including their disbelief in the possibility of a rare time. But we have to take apart the ways they're thinking, and we have to apply the strategy, which is fight the power and transform the people for revolution. We have to impact society. That's what we did in Philadelphia around this, and in other ways, in terms of defending the people when they come under attack. But even in that defense, that could very easily end up being a defensive thing solely, as opposed to we're defending the people as part of preparing the people to actually fight for revolution. And actually, while we're doing that, we have to go hard at what's keeping people, including Marco, maybe, from being part of this. As much as I appreciate the question, because you have to ask yourself, what is it in my thinking that's keeping me from really actively working with the RevComs? And I think that's the relationship between these two things that's been very. I mean, it's a good question, because I've been thinking too. Man, we've been talking about this rare time for some time and trying to bring that out, how things could come to a head, and people go right on, or they go like, I really wish that were true, but I can't act on it. So there's something standing in the way. And to the degree that we haven't been fighting for this, that's what's been standing in the way. So in one sense, I'm speaking to our own movement. So let's see, what do we got here?
We have a call coming in. Yeah, answer the call.
You get in on it too here.
Okay, so we're live, and we have Lapis calling from the Watch Party in Chicago. Go ahead, Lapis.
Wait, I'm not getting it.
Oh, if you can mute your TV while you're speaking, that would be great.
I'll do that. I'll move to a more quiet space.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Lapis. With the Revolution Club in Chicago, we have a small watch party, and we have a situation where...
Lapis, why don't you hold on for 1 second? We can't... Okay, we actually can't. I thought we couldn't hear you on the live stream. Go ahead, Lapis.
So we've been working with some youth recently and having trouble figuring out, not getting pulled in all kinds of ways. Youth come with this like energy, and with that energy comes like this sort of rambunctiousness. And I'm thinking in terms of like going to masses of like basic youth. How do you go about like breaking it open with them in a way where you don't get pulled in all kinds of like different directions that comes like with being a youth? I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Well, do you want to get a little more specific about what you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, young kids in high school and some in like middle school, and this energy, they're like everywhere in terms of like their thinking. They go from here to here to there, and it's pulling them together in a way that they can actually like grasp what we're bringing to them in terms of what's needed and what their role is. Does that help?
Yeah, a little bit, but I have to put down this earphone to talk to you, this headphone. Lapis, we need that energy. That's the first point. We need that energy, and it's got to go in the right direction, but you have to lead that. I mean, I know that's easier said than done, but one thing you have going for you in a really big way is the points of attention for the Revolution Club and the two principles on which these clubs are organized. But those Revolution Clubs, those points of attention give a good guidance to people as for the kinds of things that we have to be, that should be guiding what people do as they're taking up activity, and that's going to be a process. And along with that, there are these 7 key points, and they're very concentrated. But I think we need to make those come alive in the course of doing things together with those youth. And you need to come up with things that that people will want to do. I don't. It's been a couple summers since we've been around your center in South Chicago there, but we had earlier on. I was looking at those pictures from Austin, Texas, and I was young once, maybe not as rambunctious as those kids, but sometimes young people like to decorate like to be artistic and find ways to be artistic, and their artistry should be encouraged, whether it's on the walls or in their songs, in the different things they do, and they're also facing a lot of shit, and some of that needs to be marshaled in a political direction, and you have to work with them to find out what different ways they want to express that. But youth are going to run in a lot of different directions, and it's very important that you're not going to be able to hold these youth if you don't really go to them with the full thing, the full hardcore ideology of there is a way to know and change the world. There's a way to live in this world, and there's this leader, Baba Vakian, and you've got to get them to watch watch some of these the interviews, and if you need to start with the interview where he's directly speaking to the youth, you should start there, and you might want to play just a paragraph at a time and stop and discuss them, because he's talking to these youth directly. The key thing we have to do with these youth is, yes, they have this energy and this rambunctiousness, but we have to put them on a mission. Their lives count for nothing to the people who rule this system. Nothing. They're dirt as far as the system. They'll be conscripted into their army. They'll be thrown into a warehouse of the prison. They'll be out here on the street, drugged out in one form or another, brutalized by the police, demeaned by the preachers. All this is what their future is, and they know that here. And what Baba Vakian does in that interview, he says, I know that what's really in here is that you care. You got to listen very closely to their music, which is largely not that good, especially the Chicago drill music. But inside some of these songs, you can sense that there's an aspiration for something better. And there's also a burning anger. And instead of trying to see if I can be number one against the set down the block or 10 blocks away, you got to give them the full thing. Put them on a mission for revolution. There's no other purpose they have in their life that's going to go anywhere good. And you got to be hard on that, Lapis. You got to be really hard on that. That's what you need. You listen to some of these preachers, and they're really hard on these youth. Clean up. Be a man. Pull up your pants. Listen to the Lord. You're not all this kind of crap, which they've largely dismissed, but they've replaced it with what Ruff was, more scientifically referring as nihilism. But nothing fucking matters. I'm just going to go out and spray all over the place. No, you give them this hardcore ideology and a way to act on it and put them on a mission for revolution, and we could fucking change this world. And this is something that we have to be taking up everywhere. You know, I know Revolution Books is in New York is just a few blocks from two of the hardest projects actually in Harlem. We need to go out there and do the same thing with those youth. These youth need to be on a mission for revolution. They need to be getting into Bob Avakian, and if they think they don't want to listen to an old white man, you got to set them straight, okay? Because this is the leadership they need. Nothing else, nothing less. So that's all I can say to you about this. But you know, and you need to do this in a way that's not like a school teacher. You need to do this in a way that's like we ourselves are on this mission, and we're here with you. We're standing with you. But we got to do something that really counts for humanity, not just for ourselves, not just to get ours, but for humanity that could be freed if people like you, those who have nothing, go and fight for what could be for everyone. And maybe, I know it's not their style of music, but maybe listen to KK Ramos on this show 2 weeks ago, and that might actually speak to some of them. Maybe it influenced their work too. Annie Day is here. Look at this.
I came back.
Raphael, what a transformation.
You have to know it is so hot in the studio. Raphael just melted off the chair.
Yeah, for those, since you brought it up, for those who say, oh, we're just living the good life here with all these funds, we have one ratty air conditioner here that sounds like a jet engine, so it has to be off anytime we're recording. And so I'll tell you, just one thing I could say, you know, sometimes how the Revolution Nothing Less show gets filmed is I might do the opening at the end of the night, and so you know, I sort of start all sweaty, and then as the actual end of the show, I look rather fresh. So, but that's because we're not living. You know, we're trying to do this on a shoestring here. But if we're talking about influencing millions of people, we need millions of dollars, and that's what this $100,000 or $103,772 starts.
Right. So,
and I'm perfectly glad to see you here.
Well, I think, look, that your answer was quite powerful. And Lapis, are you still with us? Or are you gone? He's gone. Okay. Well, thank you for calling in, Lapis, and you know, both revolution clubs in Chicago and LA, bringing pretty deep questions. And you know, look, it's way past when we said we would end our live stream. There's big questions that came in, a couple on the chat, some that came in ahead of time, and we want to find the ways both on revcom.us and on the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show to answer those questions. So we didn't get to them today, but we will. And keep sending your questions and your ideas and the problems you're running into. We have to do this together. You know, Andy, you're talking about this $103,772 is significant. And people here did people watching, people all across the country did a lot of work and a lot of creativity and a lot of determination to raise those. And that has to be a very serious beginning. You know, you're talking about millions of dollars have to be raised in short order, and that's going to take even more creativity. That's going to take going out to sections of people that we've not been able to reach in the big strata, who can give the tens and tens of thousands of dollars, and working with those youth to sell water on the corners, to spare change, to take those revolutionary change jars to their schools, to their parents, to, you know, the progressive preacher down the block. We have to reach everyone. This has to grow, and it has to do it quickly, in a time when it can, and when it can make all the difference.
Could I add one point?
Yeah.
The youth have to do that. But if these youth, if even a dozen youth really got with this and were able to represent, organize, standing in a line, knowing how to march, and they would go into some of these situations that develop all the time in Chicago, whether they're on the south side or right there in Miracle Mile on the north side. These politicians come out, there's different things that happen. They come out, and when there's an organized force of those youth who are taking up this ideology, this is something Bob Avakian has spoken about many times, who, when they go into a situation, don't fall for the okey doke from the politicians and the preachers and NGOs who have a way to give a little bit of Band-Aids to people who really need a whole new system. Those youth out like that could help us and would make a major advance in heads from every strata, including that prominent strata, say, oh, exactly Marco's question. I mean, here's the other side of Marco's question. He's right. We've got to get some forces out in the field and impact society with this revolution, especially those on the bottom and youth taking this up and becoming disciplined and not just grubbing for themselves.
Right. And, if Southern California, if a city like Chicago is anything like Southern California, we do know what the pigs do day in, day out, what those NGO and politicians do day in, day out. And we also know how the fascists are organizing in the suburbs that surround those blue cities, terrorizing the school boards, terrorizing the librarians, mass protest, bringing their fascist nightmare. People have a need and a right to stand up against and defend the people against these attacks. Lenny and I were talking about that earlier. I won't back into it, but the We Are the RevComs proclamation lays out the strategy for that. That needs to be spread and it needs to be applied. So that's, I think really important, Andy. So, there's a lot we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about this initiative to take on the woke and bring real revolution in opposition to that, which is hitting the ground running all summer, building off what happened at UCLA. There's a lot we didn't talk about, but stay tuned to the RNL Revolution Nothing Less show, to revcom.us. Become a Patreon of the RNL show. Become a part of the community that's taking this up and spreading it. And we have some work to do, people.
Yeah, and for those, in terms of people being in a dialogue with the RevComs, this is very important. We say over and over again, when watching the show, watch it with other people and comment below. You watch the show on a Thursday night or a Friday night and something, a situation develops or a conversation develops, you tell somebody about it, you have an argument, put that comment on Monday night or Tuesday night. Raise your question to us, write it into us, and you can indicate in asking the question if you would like to be on the show and ask it. Because we will put, it's not live, but we will find a way to get you on the show and actually be talking about this. There has to be a great debate on the show, and don't only tell us what you agree with. We want to hear that. But tell us what your questions are, what you disagree with. We got to get this, because what your questions are questions that are out there, and we want to engage all of that as we build this movement for an actual revolution. And I just want to say again, we have a world to win, and this is a time when we can do it. And that's what this is all about. It's not for anything less than that or anything else. It's about emancipating all of humanity and doing so in this country, in this time, which is possible. It's not always possible. Now it is. You guys have brought that out earlier in the show. And we got to go fight for that in two ways. We got to fight the power, but we have a very big fight among the people for what they are doing that's not right, what they're thinking that's keeping them from this, and what they're ignoring rather than doing what's needed to actually stop a terrible future and not bring in an emancipating future when that is actually possible. And that's a rare thing, including that this is a time when we have this leadership that makes an enormous difference in being able to navigate that process of making an actual revolution. That's something maybe a subject for another show, but you'll get a sense of that if you watch those interviews.
So thank you again to everyone who gave. We're at almost $4,000 over our goal. That matters. We'll sum this up on revcom.us, and we'll see you soon. Like I said, we got a lot of work to do. So thank you, and let's go.
All right.